Yo, what's going on, people? Hey, we're here, another edition of 86 Random, where we're going to be talking some random boxing history. No pun intended there, but I'm here with Random Acoustic Thoughts, who's joined us once again to give us insight as he is one who is doing his part to push forward boxing history and being a steward of boxing history. And he's actually working on a book on Sam Langford for those that didn't know as well. So cheers there to your random acoustic thoughts.
Big up, Josh City. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem at all. Anytime, always great to have you added to the mix because it's a valuable part of the discussion as a whole. So, thank you to all who will be joining us, as well as those who will be listening on replay. You are appreciated. Hey, we're here to talk boxing history. If you have any particular points or subjects that you want to touch on, just in general as it relates to boxing history, the eras that we most profoundly deal with. With that being said, feel free to drop them off or drop them in the chat there in itself. Real quick shout out to Josh Taylor, says salute and happy Friday the 13th. Cheers there to you, Josh Taylor. Thanks for dropping by there, buddy. Friday the 13th. Oh, that is one of the things there, Random. It is Friday the 13th, a very spooky type of Friday there. If you all know the connotation there with Friday the 13th. Oh, Jason Voorhees. Yeah.
I was, I was born on Friday the 13th, 1,000 years
Oh,
ago.
oh, wow, wow. Cool, cool, cool. Good stuff, man. Good stuff right there. Friday the 13th. So you have some of that history tied to you there, Random. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Cheers to Joshua, who just dropped by as well. Says great series of movies. Yes, indeed, indeed. I had watched pretty much the majority of them, if not all of them. I'm just thinking back, maybe I remember Jason 10 or X. That was one kind of futuristic. I don't know what's come out as of late with them, maybe some kind of remakes, but it may have been a good while. But there was also a little video game. I do have that on the Switch Lite, which is pretty cool, where you can either be Jason or you can be a survivor trying to get away, whatever it may be. But it's a pretty cool thing there. So hey, appreciate you all being here in the mix again. Myself here, 86 Boxing, along with Random Acoustic Thoughts. We're talking boxing history. And to start things out, of course, Random, I want to mention because it was something you actually mentioned. It was the picture there in your profile, which is of a fighter that I know that some of you will know. Those in the chat right now probably will know. George Elbows McFadden right there. Can you share the story of that picture in your profile, Random?
Yeah, so this is from a newspaper clipping in the, I think it's like the first couple years of the 1900s. Elbows McFadden patented a noiseless speed bag. So that's the paper's depiction of his design for a noiseless speed bag that or relatively noiseless. It's got rubber there that the ball bounces off of instead of the backboard. I don't know how well it works or if it caught on, or
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing one myself anywhere in the gym, but
Yeah.
that was his groove for a minute there. It was one of his little
Yeah.
pioneering
I was
moments.
I was thinking it might not have caught on because they're still pretty noisy from all indication when I've been in the gym. So I don't think it quite took off there. Maybe good thought behind it though for sure. But yeah, it's interesting. But George Elbows McFadden there, folks. So that's a little tidbit there. I didn't know of it. Random just introduced me to such. You can see the design there. It is pretty interesting. Cheers there to Lendog YT. Appreciate you. Oh, you on some other stuff right there, Lendog. Oh, well, let me see. How did I get you out of here, huh, buddy? Let me see. Yeah, it's pretty wild out here. The chat is pretty wild when you get these random individuals coming in. So you
Yeah,
never know what
every
they're gonna say. But anyway, that being said, we're here to talk boxing history per usual. There, George Elbows McFadden, one of the greats who to not have won a world title in a pretty competitive era there. So you think about who he shared the ring with, of course. You'll get that understanding around the times of the Ginses of the world, the Jack Blackburns of the world, Frank Aaron, you name it, just some of the greats around that lightweight time frame that I've shared it before. Of course, his style is what got him that nickname elbows, as he used his elbows essentially to duck and block punches essentially in a particular type of way. So
He would
uh
trap stuff behind his head, and he had all kinds of ways of levering the arms, like more like to strain the muscles and the tendons, and it's creative use of blocking and torque to put some damage structurally on the opponent. He was a pretty serious dude. But he fought in one of those eras where it was incredibly deep, but there weren't that many weight classes. So
yeah,
you had the champion, and then at times you also had a colored champion at lightweight. But so Joe Gans, who sort of unified it, and who did defend against all comers, so it didn't split back off.
oh
You
yeah,
know, they didn't, because like when Jack Johnson won the heavyweight, the white heavyweight title in 1908, when he unified with Time Burns, he stopped trying to defend the colored claim, so they actually had a colored belt while he held what was formerly the white belt. In the case
yeah,
of Gans, he did fight white black guys alike, so they didn't split back up while he was champion.
oh
But,
yeah.
but yeah, it was one of those times when you could be great, you could have world class wins, but there's only one, at most two champs, and there's not a lot of weight classes floating around. Junior weight classes, no. In fact, in elbows time, this goes so far back that light heavyweight wasn't that well established. So I've used, as you mentioned,
Oh yeah,
86, like Joe Choyinski, had claim on in the 1890s on the light heavyweight championship, and then had other guys, George Gardner and Jack Root and Jack O'Brien, Bob Fitzsimmons, who also, but it wasn't like totally established then. It really was like a junior division, like a strange time as far as weight classes. Not a
oh
lot of
yeah,
belts going around, so sometimes you can't rate how good a fighter was by whether or not he captured a championship. So opportunities are few and far between, and there's just not a lot of divisions and weights and belts. And it's a rich era, lots of guys competing.
yeah, and yeah, that's good one. Then that point on the actual light heavyweight title. So the first was Jack Root, right? After that tournament or whatnot. So Jack Root is the first light heavyweight champion, right?
He's largely recognized, but Joe Choyinski had a claim on it
Yeah,
in the 1890s. Like before that, he was basically when it was considered the small heavyweights. So he was the
yeah,
best of the small heavyweights. And so he had, fights have been billed with that moniker. It's the time of championship by acclaim. So it's not always like anything's was necessarily universally accepted, but it could still be there and it could still be billed as something. Like it's difficult when you get that far back. It's not, you don't have a sanctioning body necessarily for all the different things, or you'd have weights championships to recognize largely but not wholly, or even just partially.
hmm yeah. That is interesting there. Yeah, I recalled that. I had just brought it up because I had recalled him being recognized at first. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that yeah, Kowinski, he was someone who had it been, I guess, established at that particular time, he could have been world light heavyweight champion. And it's interesting because you're right, he fought at heavyweight, though. A lot of guys back then, they would fight at heavyweight prior to the light heavyweight division or whatever, and you're just kind of there in the mix. So pretty much, hey, once you're over that 160 whatever, or once you were beyond middleweight, you're kind of just heavyweight in some sense right there, which is pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, we're really taking it back to the time where there were just very few universally recognized weight classes, and even those weren't codified in some
Cheers,
official
Anthony.
way. So it was
Appreciate
like,
you.
oh, good looks on the sub, Anthony. But so it was like, even when it was recognized, like the actual weights, this was a big debate then. There were calls for a national commission to set the weights officially. So part of the controversy with Joe Gans during his title run is he was contracted for above the lightweight limit when he beat Frank Ernie to Frank Ern to win the title. he was just over the limit, and some people didn't like that. And then his manager, Al Hereford, said, well, we think he'll be defending at the limit, but then he wasn't. He was also fighting welterweights in between that because he kept a busy schedule. He was making that money. So it became a controversy, and people try to undercut his claim by the fact that they were able to make the limit. And Gans later showed he could make the limit, but he wasn't for a while. And so it became a whole thing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
weight classes, even when there were less weight classes, it was still a bit of a shit show. It really was.
Yeah. And Joshua mentioned so that would make Henry Hen Pierce a real champion. There was nobody. Yeah, if you think about it, potentially. I know of Pierce, don't know a lot about him. I do know of what you're speaking of, Joshua. But yeah, I guess that's where it gets a bit cloudy. In some sense, one of those things that comes about. Cheers, there. Anthony says, when did the division between heavyweight and 135 come? Because I felt 135 in the heavyweight division with there were the two original divisions in boxing. So yeah, light heavyweight or lightweight. I mean, so they first recognized Jack McCauley. I'm trying to think of what year that was. I'd have a video out there on Jack McCauley, but he's the one that they recognized as the first lightweight champion. I forget what year. It might have been in the 1870s, at sometime in the 1870s, I want to say, or the 80s, there in the early 80s. But it was somewhere back in there, somewhere around there, 135. And Jack McCauley, he was recognized, the Napoleon of the Ring of Irish descent there. And Anthony mentions who was the first Hispanic champion in boxing history. I suppose it might be the Mendoza guy who was, I guess that was more so goes into, that's getting into the bare knuckle, I guess you could say. But Mendoza from back in the bare knuckle days, he was, I guess, one of the individuals who was first recognized that I know of from Hispanic origin or something of that nature. I left a comment on that or something a little bit earlier today, as a matter of fact. But that's when we're talking. That's more, I guess, if you look at it from just a pugilistic standpoint overall, they were bare knuckling it back then, but he would be the first of known origin then. But yeah, once they started using gloves, I think Jewish. Oh yeah, Mendoza. Yeah, he might have been there. Dan, cheers there. The man in the building there. Mendoza in terms of when they first started using gloves and not bare knuckles. Okay.
Oh, word. I should mention, unless the weights moved around afterwards, lightweight was 133. At least the time I'm studying, the early 1900s, lightweight was 133 among the professionals.
Yeah, that is true.
But it may be that it initially wasn't when it was just a couple divisions. Because middleweight, I think, was set at 154, unless it was even different before it became 154, and then later it graduated up to 158, and then the 160 we know and love.
Yeah, I've seen it at 152, 154, as you mentioned, and 158, as you noted there. Of course, we know it to be 160 now, but in the time of Nonpareil Jack Dempsey, you hadn't hit that 160 range, as a matter of fact. So when he first won it, might have been 152 or 154, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. So yeah, there are definitely some differences there. And you're right about lightweight. It was 133 pounds. I know up through the early 1900s. Then even thinking about the 1910s, as you got beyond the 1910s, in the 1910s, it was still 133. It changed at some point in the mixed era. Can't remember exactly when, but if you recall, Packy McFarlane, he never fought for the title. He couldn't make 133 pounds, and therefore he never got a shot at the title at that particular weight, which is pretty interesting, right? When you think about it, which is considering it's only 2 pounds or whatever, but that shift would have come somewhere, I think would have been probably in the mid 1910s, somewhere thereafter, where it shifted somewhat. Just thinking about the weight from 133 to 135, but I can't recall exactly when there, but I know it did shift at some point.
Yeah. Well, I think either at that time, or by the time they had the ring rankings, it was 135. So maybe it was like a New York thing. They set it, and then people went along with it. But as far as setting
Oh,
the
yeah.
weights, I can't remember. That's not really my specialty.
Yeah. Then Anthony mentions, was it more common for fighters to have long amateur careers, or were there more fighters that were learning on the job? I mean, that could vary right there, because even if you go back to the 1800s, there were fighters who had amateur careers. I would say it depends. Probably not longer if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of what we see maybe today with someone like Lomachenko, who had 300 or almost 400 amateur fights or something like that. And then you have guys and girls who have hundreds of amateur fights. So you probably didn't see it to that degree. But that being said, there were those that competed in the amateurs, even going back beyond the 20s. As a matter of fact, Corbett, who was speaking on earlier, James J. Corbett, before he actually went into the pro ranks, he was an amateur champion, if I'm not mistaken. He twice won the San Francisco heavyweight title in the amateur side before turning pro, and then ultimately doing what he was able to do in the sport, then in the heavyweight ranks right there. So I think it could vary for the most part as far as how long a person stayed in the amateur. So for a guy like Corbett, it might have been a bit longer than some typically would have. Then you take a guy like Langford, who you've mentioned, he had some amateur fights. I know you've noted they're random, but it wasn't like an extensive or long amateur career.
No, it was just like a couple months, and then a couple months after that, he fought on a pro card. But it's also the money. Not everyone had the luxury of staying amateur. So like Jimmy Britt, who we've done the show on, was a rival claimant to Joe Gans in early 1900s. He was a famous amateur champ based in San Francisco. He made his fame before he turned pro, but I think he was only an amateur for about a year. It could have been longer, but his notable amateur fights was about a year, and then he turned pro. Very quickly jumped in at the high levels. He very quickly got wins over former lightweight champs, Kid Levine, and then Frank Aaron, as the beginning of him challenging Gans' claim as lightweight champ. Then is now one of the best ways to establish like credibility is you beat the ex-champions. Big up, Bruce.
Cheers there, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Be sure to go check them out, folks. Bruce Gas. Shout out to Boz, who dropped in as well. Neo Boz, that is. Neo from the Matrix there, Boz. So appreciate your Boz. Appreciate your Bruce Gas, folks. If you don't know, go follow them. Go check them out. They do their thing there for sure. Shout out to Alistair. Mentions Jack Skelly got a title shot against George Dixon purely off of his amateur accolades. Okay. That's pretty solid right there. Getting it straight off the amateur accolades. I remember that happening later in years, of course. I think that was the case with Rodemaker, right? Pete Rodemaker, if I'm not mistaken. He just got a title shot in his first fight or something like that with Patterson. Was that? I think I'm thinking of it right.
Yeah, I know that Patterson, one of his fights, he was fighting amateur. Maybe it was an Olympic champ, but like it was, the guy was turning pro. That's pretty heavy duty, but
Yep. First professional bout he fought. It was 57. So his first bout was for a world heavyweight title against Patterson. That's pretty crazy right there. So thanks for sharing that. I don't think I knew that right there. So Jack Skelly got a shot first. I guess I'm assuming that's straight off the amateurs there. Alistair, as far as his first fight being a title shot, pretty interesting.
Yeah, and whereas, like, say with Sam Langford, he got a title shot pretty quickly after turning pro, but he wasn't like a national amateur champion. He won a tournament in January of 1902, and then not long after, he won the next month, he won a special amateur bout that headlined with the longer rounds that headlined an amateur night, and that was it. And then his next booking was on a pro card, and that was it for the amateurs. Whereas other people actually did go through like local, regional, and then won a national championship to be recognized as a national amateur champion. But not everyone stayed, because these amateur nights, one, you're fighting for prize, so you can't just get. There's not like a loser's end to the prize that I'm aware of. So unless you could get one for being in the finals, perhaps, but like so, when you turn pro, even if you're just getting 40% of the purse, 60-40 winner loser split, that's still better than potentially nothing. So there wasn't a lot of incentive for guys to stay amateur, but also they'd be managers at these events trying to look for talent. They wanted talent because you can make some good money as a manager picking a proportion of all those bookings. So yeah, it was hard to stay amateur.
Yeah, that's still kind of the case today where you have some of that scouting, I guess. Or if you get to a certain level there on the amateur side, say you're on the high performance teams and all that, they're definitely taking notice, or at least the way it's structured now. So that stuff does hold true there. And Bruce mentions Lomo and Leon Spinks got shots early in their careers. Yep, you're right, because for Lomachenko, it was like his third fight, I want to say. He was fighting for a title, and then Leon Spinks, was it fight 6 or something like that, when he was fighting Ali for the title? Was he 6 or 7? One of the two, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So those are some interesting dynamics right there. So it has happened, even if not that very first fight, but it has happened a number of times where someone got a title shot and they were very early on in their careers as far as coming out of the amateurs and all that stuff. So that connections, do you think that's connections more than anything right there, being able to do it? Just thinking about it. So that's the interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, and money, if you're famous, if you're well known enough, like the amateurs, it's a good platform to build a name, build some earning power before you even have that pro win-loss record at stake. So said 76 Olympics got that.
Yeah. Dan mentions in relation to Leon 76 Olympic Games. Yeah, Leon Spinks, he's an interesting fighter there. Just in terms of, if you look at his record, that looks pretty crazy. But he had a lot of success there early, and then I guess a lot of issues there in the aftermath. I saw a little documentary someone did on his channel. Her name's I think it's T's Hot Mess History, or Hot Mess History with T, or something like that. And I had watched this little documentary she did on Leon Spinks. It was not necessarily about boxing. It was more so about his personal life. And man, he was a pretty wild dude right there, Leon Spinks. So that kind of explains how he wasn't locked in and focused on boxing there, because he was doing some pretty wild stuff there in terms of his relationship and how he carried himself. So it explains it somewhat in terms of why his career looks the way it does.
Yeah, you got a lot of high risk individuals are drawn to combat sports.
Yeah,
the concept of it. So we've talked about Jack Blackburn. He had a pretty stormy life.
Oh yeah.
And actually went to prison, interrupted his career. Prison interrupted it for a while because it wasn't just him. Joe Walcott, the original Joe Walcott, Barbados Joe Walcott, early welterweight great. He shot himself on accident, but he did carry a piece around with him. So even before someone didn't shoot him, but he shot himself with his own piece that he'd have around. It's just the nature of combat sports. A lot of the people who are drawn to compete in it do have that. I don't know if adrenaline junkie is entirely accurate, but certainly high risk individuals.
Oh yeah.
Are able to stand those kind of pressures or even thrive on them. Because we talk about say Ali, his greatness and his wonderfully quick tongue and boxing skills and stuff, but it was also his competitive edge. You could see.
Oh yeah.
He just started talking about it too much, and already he's ready to get in the stance and start flicking out those hands and stuff because he got a thrill out of it. Even the supposed nice guy boxers, some tough people, and they get off on the thrill of it.
No, you're right. That is right. Yeah, all of them. Do you think of even a guy like Sugar Ray Leonard? You know what I'm saying? He's nice guy and all that stuff, but yeah, everything wasn't necessarily roses and peaches with him at all times. Just think
Right.
about it. It's
Still
pretty
pretty
interesting.
soft spoken, but he's a professional fighter. He kicks people's asses for money.
Yeah.
And you even see there's some interviews or some like get-togethers with him and Tommy Hearns. They face off, and you can feel the tension between the men. That's it's in their nature. So just because they're nice or they're relatable on some level,
Yeah.
they still even take your guys with the nicest reputation. There's a reason they can go in there and fight under all that pressure and
Yeah.
thrive.
Pull it out. They have that
They got
mean
something
streak in
going
them.
on there. Yeah, they're not just your random guy, nice guy who's just stepped in and happens to be good at it.
Yeah. Especially to have that killer instinct, the way a guy like Leonard could have, or something like that, because he definitely had that. And it's just like, yeah, there's something there. Dan mentions very good friend of mine on the 76 Olympics team as an alternate for Clinton Jackson. My friend beat Jackson twice in box off, but Clinton was highest rated amateur hitter. Oh, good stuff there, Dan. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing there. So, oh, wow, that's really cool. That 76 Olympic team. I know Boz had mentioned what a team. I don't remember who all was on there, though. I got to look it up to see who all was on that. But that's pretty crazy right there. Just thinking about that, Dan. Thanks for sharing right there. So they had a friend that was there. I know that gets competitive, and now it's kind of changed in terms of the process as far as how one ends up getting to become a part of the Olympic team. And yeah, it's an interesting process now because it's not solely based on the Olympic trials, because you can win at the Olympic trials and not necessarily be on the Olympic team. So the dynamics are fairly interesting.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that happened with Stephanie Simon, who's been on the channel a few times. So shout out to Stephanie, the Fighting Marine Simon there. But yeah, she won Olympic trials, but she ended up not going to the Olympic team because there's a process in between now. And what I was mentioning in terms of how they spot out some of the top amateurs now, they have this high performance team now. You have a elite and then a youth version of the high performance team, and yeah, something to that tune. And I know she was on one version of the high performance team, so there's like two different iterations of it. I forget exactly how it lays out, but there's more that goes into it now. I guess it's a series of things, and then they judge it. I don't know if you accumulate points or whatever it is, but it's not just based on the trials itself, and it's some other things that are tied into it. But but if you do go on USA Boxing and you look up like their high performance team, that'll give you an indication what I'm talking about, because we have here in this area. So yeah, you have the elite men's elite high performance team. You have the women's elite high performance team. Then, like I said, there's a youth version, and then there's, I believe, or at least previously, there was a version that is just like a high performance team. Maybe it's like a non-elite. I forget exactly how it works there. But if you search it out there, you see what I'm talking about, because they have some of the top amateurs right now, like on the U.S. team. They're listed there if you go by USA Boxing's website. So we have someone from the youth and on the elite team who are here in this area. Marcus Luther, he's one to watch, of course, on the amateur side. If you haven't heard of him, super sharp and very dangerous fighter, even on the amateur side, because he gets stoppages. If you're getting stoppages with the gear and all of that stuff on, though of course when they're competing at the Olympic or the international tournaments, they take it off. But when you're getting stoppages with the gear on, that says something. So Marcus Luther, and then there's Asan Jenkins. That's another one who is he's out of No Excuse boxing in the gym of Lamont Roach Sr. So Lamont Roach, of course, is from there, his brother and all that stuff. So that shows you there's some high level boxers in this area, but there are two from this area that are on that high performance team. So usually when you reach there, there's going to be a lot of attention, a lot of people paying attention to you. Of course, the promoters, those that are looking to essentially sign boxers once they're done on the amateur side as well. So that's why I mentioned it essentially.
Very interesting.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I would say it's worth mentioning, like when we talk about like the what who all of us consider all-time greats, different ways of listing people. Some people put more weight on the amateurs than others. Some
Oh
people
yeah.
just consider it a different version of the sport and that they're really judging about pro boxers separate from amateur experience. But certainly if someone weighed the amateur accolades more heavily, the list would change dramatically because that's not easy either. It's just a different version. So like for my list, I don't really consider amateur experience. I'm just thinking about the great pro fighters, but
Oh yeah.
you know, it's a subjective thing. People can do whatever they want. So yeah, it certainly would change a list because, and maybe that's some of the disconnect between people who
Mm-hmm.
have like more highly rated fighters of more recent generations where they had extensive amateur experience and won awards and medals and things, and where they would count that.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
if someone wasn't counting it, the pro careers are shorter because they get doing a lot at amateur before they even turn pro.
Mm-hmm.
So that would certainly skew a list, and maybe that is part of the at least some of the difference in the way people rate fighters historically.
Yeah. I think some of that might factor in there. Generally, yeah. Of course, we know the pro ranks, but certainly if you had an extensive or more high profile amateur career, then people tend to take notice. Then you can have some outliers, and it's not necessarily the case. Like for Terrence Crawford, from an amateur standpoint, he wasn't one of the like grand standouts coming out of the amateurs. That I think maybe if you were in or around there and you knew him, you knew he had that potential or whatever. But there are some other amateurs that came out around that time who had higher hopes and who some probably thought would end up being getting on that pound for pound level, certainly to reach number one as far as consensus and what many people thought. That is something major right there. And yeah, Crawford, he didn't have that type of backing. You look at a guy like Spence, of course, he was touted coming out of the amateurs, and he was an Olympian, and he made it to that pound for pound list and all that stuff, of course. And it just so happens he ended up in the same weight class there where Crawford ended up. And we know, of course, how that went and all of that stuff. But just goes to show right there, some things, it could just be pretty insane and crazy how things end up right there. But certainly, if you have a successful amateur career, then most times, you're going to have some backing. Not always the case, but you're going to have some backing coming out. And then you're going to end up fighting on television, for instance, like your very first fight in cases where for some that wouldn't be the case or whatnot. So, but we've seen that here, just kind of how the cookie crumbles, I guess you could say. But there, if you're a top level amateur, then as we've seen with some of these top promoters, you're usually being showcased there very early on in terms of the main cars, even the preliminary of the televised stuff. You're getting out there early on for sure. At least it helps in some sense.
Yeah, wasn't it part of the dynamic between Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe? Weren't they fought as amateurs?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Wasn't part of the dynamic between Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe that they had
Oh
actually
yeah,
fought each other as amateurs? The whole
yeah.
drama about trying to put them together in a fight. That would have been a good fight too.
Yeah, as I understand it, I know some people are more versed on it than I am, like Bruce Gass and others who were who were watching it more closely back then. But yeah, that's and I believe usually it's the case where a lot of those individuals are around each other. Um, so Lennox, he had already been in with like Tyson, for instance, or something of that nature. I know they were around each other. I believe they had actually competed, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if they.
Um,
I know they were in the same training environment.
or yeah, something of that tune right there. So a lot
Tyson
of them, they
mentioned that.
were
Yeah,
around
they
each
were
other
around each other.
and knew of
They
each
weren't.
other. Same with Evander Holyfield being in and around it. And if you're in that amateur circuit, then yeah, you're gonna know the other top amateurs there for sure. Because how I mentioned these individuals, like on the mention the high performance team and all that stuff. But yeah, usually in the way it works now. So like if you're on those teams or you're competing, you're getting in the mix there with this team, you're meeting at these international tournaments or whatever, and or you're meeting in these national tournaments and all of that stuff, and you're seeing other amateurs and all that stuff, and then they bring all the best in for these tournaments that take place, and that's how they end up using things to narrow down who ends up being on the team. So these are individuals who are going to see and know each other, even if they're not in the same weight class at that particular time. From a pro perspective, it's known that they're likely, in all likelihood, at least, going to end up pretty much in the same weight range or weight class at some point, and you have that kind of history that's tied back to it.
Yeah, it's a good point. Some of these rivalries go back further than.
And Dan shared some good information
Oh, yeah,
in
Dan
that regard
spitting
as
some
well.
truth there about some people leave it in the amateurs.
Yes,
Especially,
yes,
you can ruin
definitely.
your hand. You can ruin your hands over doing it with the bag work and fighting and this and that before you got a pro record at stake. And there are guys who smash their hands up. Maybe that has a part to do with why there weren't maybe as many deep amateur runs back in the day, because you couldn't get easy reconstructive surgery. Like, oh, I'm gonna get a titanium rod instead of this piece of my hand. You'd just be screwed.
Oh yeah.
So that is a factor that you can leave too much in
Oh
a
yeah.
setting. It'd be like it's like practicing guitar so much that you get arthritis, and then when you get to the part of I practiced for 30 years, and then when you finally get some shows, your fingers cramp up because you left too much in the bedroom, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
Practicing could happen.
Yeah, hey, and Dan just mentioned something because he mentioned Biggs, and I remember Biggs. Yeah, he was highly regarded. But Dan mentioned Henry Tillman beat Tyson in box offs for junior heavyweight. So I was just trying to think of it, Dan. It was like running through my mind just as you said there. I saw an interview recently where Henry Tillman was talking about that and facing Tyson there, and Tyson ended up being like an alternate or something of that nature. But that being said, yeah, Tillman did beat him twice, and then some look at the kind of pro career aspect of it, think like how did that happen or whatever, but it's one of those situations. But yeah, Henry Tillman, I'll have to find who this interview was with, but he was giving pretty much a raw account of how things went, and he was speaking on kind of just seeing and knowing at that particular time that Mike Tyson, he was going to be tough for a special fighter, just kind of to deal with their thinking down the road, getting to the pro ranks, just from the standpoint of what he was feeling from being in there with him at that particular time. Good stuff there. Dan, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, like one of my favorite, probably my favorite modern guy, Joe Calzaghe. He was like a 3-weight ABA champ.
Yeah.
He wasn't undefeated as an amateur, but he had a lot of fights, and he won at 3 weights. And I'm pretty sure he actually debuted at super middle. So like, even though some people would say there are super middleweights who at their best were better than Calzaghe at his best, but as far as like how much of a career has been spent at super middle, I mean, he spent pretty much the whole damn thing until he went up and fought Jones and Hopkins. I'm guessing all of those, unless someone missed weight, were at super middle whole career.
Oh yeah.
Whereas other guys like Roy Jones Jr., James Toney, I don't think they spent quite the same. Well, they didn't spend the same percentage.
Yeah, not a lot of time there.
But a lot of people would say that overall they were greater.
Yeah.
Overall in their career, they were greater fighters, but didn't spend as much of their career. So that's another factor thinking about in terms of greatness. What kind of slice of someone's resume is being factored, especially when you get to a specific weight class. Because with Sam Langford, it would make a huge difference because he had a lot of heavyweight fights before he outgrew middleweight.
Oh
so the other side of the ring, there was a heavyweight, but he was like a middleweight, fighting him and often winning, keeping a winning record. So yeah, some people would say, well, that's not really heavyweight, whereas other people would say, well, the opponent couldn't make the lower weight, so he's weight traveling. Same way we'd say more like what weight class did Duran fight Iran Barkley at?
I believe that was 150. Was that 154? I think it was 154.
I can't remember. You can see in the ring there's a size difference, even though you know, the Blade, he had like a big head too and a big frame, so he looked even bigger than he was. But no, you can see in some of these fights, there's clearly an in-ring size difference, but it
Oh,
doesn't
then
always
there's no
determine the winner.
middleweight. So yeah, Barkley.
160.
I've been next to Barkley. Yeah, he's a big dude. This was a few years back at your Connecticut Hall of Fame. Of course, he's older now, but yeah, you can see that he's a big guy. And to think, yeah, he was making some of those lower weights. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a tough, especially if you look at the height comparison and all that stuff. But just size in general, Barkley, yeah, he's a big dude.
Right. Some guys like, so say I'm going to once again bring up Langford because I don't want to talk, I only want to talk about stuff I know about. But, you know, he was actually in that 133 class or 135 his amateur fights.
All right,
Whereas
Joe, appreciate you. But yeah,
someone like James Toney, I think he came up at middleweight, but he was 200 pounds plus when he was in high school when he was playing football. So he was a
wow.
big guy who then came down considerably, dieted and trained down for a boxing weight. But some people, they just, so again, and especially when fighters start young,
Yeah,
that can explain how some guys can come from real lower weights and end up with these ridiculous weight class jumps. Sometimes they're not putting in the whole weight, or sometimes they're just part of that. It's just a natural finishing off puberty and finishing growing into a full grown adult.
yeah, it is pretty crazy. That was the case with Sean Porter too. He actually came down in weight, ended up going down there to welterweight, where he ultimately, that's what we know him to compete at. Can't remember if he's at 140, but he played football, I guess some other sports, but yeah, he was another one who came down. He was bigger when he was playing football, as I know it.
Yeah, so it all depends. You know, it depends on someone's specific journey, their own particular journey. So, all
Yeah.
right, Josh, let me quiz you on something.
Oh yeah.
So, shout out just a random fight or two. Do you recommend if they just want to see a really good fight for whatever standards you personally hold, like for action or for technique or back and forth drama? What's a couple fights you could recommend to the people just that maybe you might have watched recently, rewatched that you just want to mention? There's so many options. We're so blessed with YouTube and all that.
Oh yeah. There's so many recent stuff. Well, it depends. Yeah, from a standpoint of like, because I've been watching some of the stuff that took place here recently, but some of my favorite fights to watch that I've seen like countless amounts of times are like, there's this one from, I forget the year, it might have been 2015ish, 2014, 15. Uh, Luis Ninka Concepcion versus Hernan Marquez. Their first fight. Hernan Tyson Marquez. They called him Tyson Marquez, of course, reference to Mike Tyson. They're lower weight fighters, but they had what was a back and forth, this crazy stylistic fight and matchup that took place. It was a fight of the year type fight that was, I want to say, I'm thinking 2014, but I could be a little bit, but it could have been just before that, but somewhere around there. But look it up. They fought more than once, but that first fight is the marquee fight there. So Luis Concepcion versus Hernan Marquez. That's like one of my favorites to watch. Just the back and forth. And stylistically, they're so different that it just made for an interesting fight, just in terms of the amount of punishment being taken by Concepcion and how he was dishing out fights, pretty much just loading everything into one shot and just trying to make that shot count and all that stuff. Just an exciting fight there for individuals to watch. If you haven't seen it, I know it is out there on YouTube. There have been different iterations of it out there, so something should still be out there. So definitely check it out. I'll put Luis Concepcion versus Hernan Marquez. And these lower weight fighters, man, they get into some wars and things of that nature very early on. And some of them, they're past their prime by the time they hit 30, like what we saw back in the day, of course, when guys were fighting very much often, super often, tons of times, you know. So similar situation. But yeah, this is one there that she mentioned that Redham. That's one that I'm pretty fond of. And then interestingly, and I know we did a show. It was myself, you, uh, BL and Scrapbook Boxing one time is like our 5 favorite fights or something like that. So I mentioned on there, I've always liked Oscar De La Hoya and his fighting style. So he's had some fights that I really like, that I've watched countless times. Him against Ike Corte, him against Fernando Vargas. Those are ones I like. Him against Ricardo Mayorga. Those are 3 that I really like.
Nice.
But certainly that Ike Corte fight and that Fernando Vargas fight, those are 2 of my favorites from Oscar De La Hoya right there that I think people haven't seen, certainly worth checking out there for sure. And he's got some other ones that were good, but as far as my favorites, those are 2 of them for sure.
Those are good shouts. I like that. And Duran Barkley. I'm assuming a lot of the people who are into the history, they've already seen that. But that's a fun fight.
2 weight class champion too.
And at the end of that fight was when they were like, "This is one of the greatest fighters of all time." Because they're celebrating Duran. That was one of the fights that put him in that conversation. So.
Dan mentions Diego Corrales as well, who was hell of a fighter right there. Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo. That's a crazy fight right there. And that ending is everything boxing is made of right there, how it went down. If you haven't seen that, check it out, folks.
Yeah, and how about James Toney and Vasily Jurov? Was that cruiserweight? Nah, that's a fight. You want to talk about a lot of punches, and you want to see the coolness under pressure. Toney, basically, he managed to get a guy who was famous for throwing a lot of punches to gas out because he was so good at slipping and minimizing the damage and throwing back at the right moments and stuff. That was a great fight. I love that. I don't even know how many times I've seen that mess.
Dan mentions Caveman Lee versus Johnny Lucero, middleweight 1980 approximately. I have to check that out, Dan. Haven't seen that one.
That's cool. And how about Floyd Patterson, Archie Moore? You want to see someone who had the answer to the cross-arm guard, or at least in their matchup. Good stuff. Sometimes you see the great stylists. Maybe the timing isn't as good as it could be and where they are in their careers, but it's great to see an interesting style, just like Tyson Larry Holmes.
Yeah.
Great jabber against this all-round speed demon, the smaller speed demon. Can't always get it just when the time is right, but it can still be worthwhile. Just like, look at all the accolades that Crawford got, even though they took a while to put that Spence fight together. But once they had, and he did what he did, even before he then did what he did, got a lot of credit for that, because it's even better late than never. Mayweather Pacquiao. You could still debate who had the greater career depending on how people define greatness.
Certainly.
But it definitely, that wasn't right on time. Pacquiao had lost. By the time they put it on, he wasn't on this crazy run of momentum, but it still counted for a lot.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so that type of stuff factors in. Neither were spring chicken, but had it happened probably 5 years earlier, that would have been awesome right there. Certainly, that's at least on paper. But it would have. Yeah, the outcome, it would have been interesting, because I know at that time I felt Mayweather would have won. But that being said, it would have just been interesting to have seen it. And sometimes it's a stylistic thing there as well. Dan mentions Bazooka Limon, Bobby Chacon. Oh, yes, that's one held in high regards. And of course, you mentioned Cornelius Boza Edwards versus Bobby Chacon. Yep, definitely. One of them, or I don't know if it was that one where they fought twice there, Dan. But that's but great things heard about that. Skywalker Boxing mentions that's his uncle there, Bobby Chacon. So that's one right there. Mickey Ward Gotti, certainly. That's one that should be on everyone's list in terms of that first fight there. If you haven't seen it, it's one worth checking out there. Then Saud Muhammad, Yaki Lopez, heard nothing but great things about that one as well there, Dan. As far as people mentioning that fight, shout out to Joe Casano, because I know he was friends with Yaki Lopez, held him in high regards as well. But Yaki, hell of a fighter there for sure. Another one going back that I enjoyed, I think people would enjoy, is Archie Moore, Yvonne Durrell. That was one where Archie Moore he had to actually overcome. I forget how many knockdowns in the first round, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 3 knockdowns or
Yeah.
something like that.
I'm
Something.
trying to remember. Was that their first or second fight? Was the second one that was super crazy? I can't
You,
remember.
you know, I'm trying to think. It might. I was thinking the first, but I think everyone, yeah, you know which one I'm talking about there, where
Oh yeah.
he got dropped multiple times, and then he came back and ended up winning the fight via stoppage. So Archie Moore, Yvonne Durrell, have to see exactly which one it is, though.
Yeah, and I would say also definitely worth a good watch if you haven't in a while.
Oh yeah,
Ali Foreman, not the highlights, the full fight.
oh yeah, oh
Ali
yeah,
Foreman was a more competitive fight than the story that's come out of it. The generic version that people tell is like he was just a punching bag and he gassed him out. But you look at that fight, he's landing,
yeah.
he's
You're
got
right.
his own artillery coming back, pulling on his neck. He's doing the work like Jack Johnson famously used to do. He's working on his man before he turns before the fight really turns sharply against the opponent. He's already
Mm-hmm.
breaking him down, pulling on the neck. Jack Johnson was good with that stuff, and Ali was doing a lot in that fight compared to the way I had heard people describe it. Definitely worth a watch. It was a lot of fun. Good fight.
Oh yeah, yeah, certainly. No, that's a good one there. Hey, there've been some pretty crazy ones here over the years. For sure, Archie Moore versus Durrell. Yeah, Dan mentions the greatest there, the first fight. So Dan mentions it's the first fight. Good stuff there, Dan. Good note right there. Yeah, that was crazy. Anthony mentioned which fight did you guys like better in their rivalry with Esteban De Jesus or Roberto Duran? Which fight? Which fight did you guys like? So I know that that's sort of who I guess you could say sort of like the coming out party in some sense there for Duran. In that sense, there, Anthony. Yeah, I'm impartial. I don't really. I, I'm a Duran guy. I like Duran and all of that stuff. But uh, I know some people have hold him in higher regards at the lightweight in the lightweight ranks. Now, of course, he is one of the greatest lightweights of all time, of course. But as noted, some people view him as the greatest lightweight of all time, and I guess Ray Arcel mentioned that he, uh, I, I don't know if I'm getting the quote right, but Ray Arcel viewed him as like the top guy or something like that, or held him in high regards, having seen and I guess trained Benny Leonard and or something like that. Um, but Duran, hey, he is a beast there. But I do hold Gans, Leonard, and then Ike Williams. I have them up there as well. You know, over Duran, of course. But that being said, he's a beast. So I've just seen. I haven't been a staunch watcher of all Duran stuff. I've seen him against uh, De Jesus, but that being said, yeah, I don't have any particular preference in that regard. You
Yeah,
know,
to be honest, I don't even know if I've seen both those fights.
yeah, he.
Both of
So
their
that's
fights.
like that's what one of the rival fights for Duran for sure in terms of him being able to or him defeating De Jesus, and that's kind of something that took him over the top right there.
Yeah, and I feel you, Dan. That is a great fight. Not just because of what
Whether
Foreman
he
had
beat him in
done,
the first fight or something like that, I think De
mm,
Jesus. But yeah,
but
sorry, yeah.
like Dan's saying, Ali Foreman, the greatest box achievement he's seen. It's also because like the specifics, why it's worth watching the whole fight is because
Oh yeah, that was a crazy one.
he was throwing. Ali wasn't just getting hit. Like and then so if you've seen Foreman's run leading up to that fight with Ali, there was a reason he was the favorite. Okay, hold on a second, Anthony. Dream fight. Hands of Stone, Golden Boy, 135. Ooh,
That's an interesting
ooh.
one right there. Of course, Duran can punch, and
Not the power, but the speed.
De La Hoya be taller. Yeah, of course, he had that jab there, but I think consensus probably would lean towards Duran there
How many
to
rounds?
win
Like a
that
15
matchup.
rounder? That would make a difference, probably. Well, they're both in great shape. Yo, I
Yeah,
don't know. That's a good matchup, though, right there, Anthony.
that's a good one. Probably consensus probably lean towards Duran in that window. De La Hoya, he would be sort of he'd have that length, and of course the height, and then that length on his side there. But would he do enough, to keep off of Duran or whatever? Okay,
Well, here's one
Okay,
that didn't happen, but it almost happened. It was booked.
that's a good one.
How about Steve Collins? Had he not retired and had fought Joe Calzaghe, because Chris Eubank, that was the replacement. Eubank was booked for a different fight and then stepped in, but that was supposed to be Calzaghe Collins. That would have been a good one, man. Collins was
Yeah,
relentless. And he's kind of crazy, great chin, short arms, right? So stylistically, it'd be very interesting. But I love watching
yeah,
those Collins fights.
yeah. I was gonna say I don't know that I know enough to make a concerted to provide a concerted answer or whatnot. But that being said, I think Calzaghe. You can see Calzaghe. I would think Calzaghe could potentially outpoint him. Certainly, if he stayed on his game there, peppered him with some of those shots there from the outside, moved well, didn't get into any dog fight type situation.
Yeah, it's a shame you can't rewind Calzaghe 3 or 4 years. So where he'd be hitting his full stride when there
Oh
was
yeah,
still a lot to be said, for like Ben and Eubank, Collins, Watson, and all the great guys at 168. A lot of great matchups there. A lot of great. In fact, 168 is a funny weight class because the history of the specific division is not as rich as older divisions, but a lot of oversized middleweights are listed amongst the greatest fighters ever. Some of them just ended up at light heavy or even heavy. But that kind of size person at 168, cutting to make 168, that's a pretty big fella. But you still have to have speed and dexterity. I think a lot
oh
of
yeah,
historical matchups, that's a great weight to match people at. Like you could match Langford and Greb right at 168. It's a great weight for both of them.
mm-hmm.
Stick Billy Khan in there. Times Philadelphia Jack
Oh yeah,
O'Brien around that weight, just over
yeah.
middleweight. You get some of these great.
Mm-hmm. Good one
I'd
there.
say, Lyle and Foreman
Ron
are right
Loudor,
now.
yeah, that was that's crazy one right there. That was absolute crazy one, just the way it went down.
All right,
Crazy.
I got one for you, Josh City. So here's a matchup. So Andre Ward against Calzaghe. A lot of technique in that ring that night.
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting fight.
That's a tough one, right?
Ward had a way of slowing fighters down in a sense. So I don't think it would be the high output, because he had a way of, sort of stopping sort of that output. I've held Ward in pretty high regard. I'd probably lean Ward, but in a close decision. But that being said, maybe even close split decision. But that being said, there's a pathway for Calzaghe to win as well. If you think in terms of the output, then it would be on Calzaghe's side, generally speaking. But that being said, it's just a matter of how it looking meshes over 12 rounds.
Right. It's a different weight class, but we did see Hopkins was able to slow his fight with Calzaghe down. He
Yeah.
still lost, but he was able to keep him contained for an amount of time. So it's not like impossible to do. I like the way. I wish we had Greb. Well, like many, I wish we had Greb footage for those extreme versions of volume fighters.
Oh yeah.
It's a crazy equation because they throw in so much leather that even guys who can school someone who's not quite that busy. Oh, there's a fight for you right there, Josh. Look at that. Prime Foreman,
That's a
Prime
tough
Tyson.
one. That's a tough one right there. Might have to go, man. Big George was just such a heavy-handed beast to deal with. But man, I held Tyson in such high regards as well. Just a prime version of both. That's a very interesting one right there. I don't think that Foreman would be intimidated or anything. But I've heard different interviews and stuff where things were. Yeah, I think it's man. That's just a.
I think
That's
I
a.
might even lean Foreman in that. He was really good at framing off the opponent. And
Yeah.
Tyson's shorter, right? So even with all that great upper body movement and leg and footwork that Tyson had, Foreman was good at pushing on you and then clubbing you in the area where you ended up when
Yeah,
he's
he just
leaning
like
on you a little bit.
little uppercuts
He
he
had
does
some of
right
that
there.
technique from Archie Moore, so he knew what he was doing in there as far as manipulating the opponent's weight. In the
Yeah,
Frazier fights, they weren't just fighting in open
that'd
water,
be
just
interesting.
slinging leather. So maybe that's a tough matchup for Tyson. I'm not sure though, because Tyson was awful fast.
That's the interesting one right there, Anthony. Very
All right.
interesting. I might go with Big George, man. But Tyson, man, he's just so speedy and explosive. I mean, yeah, he was such a quick, explosive. When he had that head movement, he could dip down, like you said, get in there and come in there with those uppercuts. I don't know. Should be interesting. Tough
Yeah,
one.
I do like that one. That's a good matchup.
Oh yeah. Dan mentions I like to hit Foreman with a big right as Foreman goes down, but pulls it back with a class act. Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right there, Dan. There was an opportunity there in that fight. It was a good one. It was
That was
certainly.
smooth. He knew he either had him then or he was going to have him when he got back up. He knew he had him at that point. So yeah, that was smooth, iconic.
Oh, Anthony mentions another. I got another one. How about Pac-Man versus Chavez Sr. at 126 pounds? You got the speedy Pac-Man who can throw a lot of shots, and of course, Chavez who could withstand a lot of punishment and of course dish it out and keep coming forward on his own. That would be an interesting one right there. 126 pounds. Whew. That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting.
That's a hell of a matchup. I don't even know. But
yeah.
Pac-Man, I think he translates well when he was at those lower weights. He translates well against a lot of guys because of his overall ability and his fieriness. Give a lot of guys problems. That's hard to say. Wow.
Oh no, that's a very interesting one. And then you think if you go further back, I don't know. I think it would be an exciting fight. Maybe Pacquiao outpoints him. I don't see either. Well, yeah, I see both of them withstanding it. Maybe Pacquiao outpoints him just from the overall activity. But then again, man, Chavez keeps coming forward. He keeps throwing. So it'll be an interesting one right there. I may lean Pacquiao to pick up a close decision there, Anthony. Maybe. Yeah, Pacquiao close decisions, but then again, I mean,
how about Riddick Bowe, Jack Johnson? Bowe had the skills, but he did sometimes lunge and overthrow some of his punches. Johnson knew how to exploit everything. So even if there's a bit of a size difference,
time, of course.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out when. That'd be some discussions about the rules and gloves, but stylistically, I think that'd be fascinating.
But Evander Holyfield found success, and he wasn't the biggest of heavyweights, of course, relative to kind of where he started and things. So that would be, I guess, more in common with Jack Johnson in that sense.
That's true. Holyfield was a beast, man. He threw counters in combination.
But yeah,
so he wasn't coming back for the shot. He might throw you a 3-piece in return for your thing. That's special. He was special.
Yeah, Bowe. But Bowe was a handful to deal with just with his size and everything. So that would make it tough right there for Jack. But yeah, the style of fight and type of fight also factors in because those eras are so different. It makes it
you have to do a return match. You have to fight in each guy's era because maybe between some of these top level fighters, if they're in their familiar ground, they do better.
Oh yeah. Shout out Straight Fighter for life in here. Appreciate you there, Straight Fighter for sure. Says Duran whoops Floyd. So yeah, potentially it could happen there. Potentially could, But some they argue otherwise. Depends on the weight, I guess you can say. But yeah, certainly could happen. Hurricane Dick Tiger beat all four. Oh, those one done good fighters right there. Ruben Hurricane Carter, Dick Tiger, of course, the Nigerian. He was a beast there and strong fighter, solid guy. Depending on the weight, of course. I would say anywhere. I guess you're thinking middleweight-ish. Then Dick Tiger, he clears for sure. Just a hell of a fighter to deal with. Because Dick Tiger, he was a beast. No doubt about it. Underrated fighter there too. A lot of people don't know of him. I haven't done anything on him outside of a little photo animation videos or whatever. But Dick Tiger was a hell of a fighter there, and he was a light heavyweight champion as well. Got knocked out by Bob Foster. That's one of the sort of craziest knockouts that is out there. If you think of those top knockouts that cleared era across any eras. Dick Tiger getting knocked out by Bob Foster is certainly one of them because Foster just came out of there out of nowhere there with that just took him out right there, took him down and out for
That's the one
sure.
where he basically just collapses, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jackson and McCallum, good fighters they were.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Julian the Hawk Jackson. Yeah, hell of a puncher right there. Then McCallum, yeah, RP. I know he passed away. I think it was last year. Um, but yeah, he was a hell of a fighter there. The body snatcher there, and he's held in very high regards. You know, some people say he should be in the mix there in terms of just thinking about some of those greats there. For when you think about that transition, or think about, of course, you had the big four there with Duran, Leonard, Hagler, and Hearns and all that stuff. But then as time went on there, McCallum there being in the mix, and then what he was able to do in continue forward, he's like right up there in that regard. That's what I've heard a lot of people mention that, you know. So,
Oh yeah, and
it,
stylistically, you know, he deserves and deserves a lot of credit for his counterpunching, especially the body.
mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't just he would hit you hard in the body. Lots of guys can do that.
Oh
He
yeah,
could, in the flow of the action, he could land these wonderful body punches while adjusting his positioning to still be in a good position. You know, that
oh yeah,
intelligence, that footwork. It's not always like Willie Pep style smoothness
oh
that
yeah,
doesn't mean stopping guys. Sometimes, depending on the kind of counters, like with Holyfield, like he hit hard on the counter. And he might jab, cross, hook on a counter, not just throw a single good shot. So, like, yeah, McCallum was special. He's got a lot of fun fights to
oh yeah,
watch. Just how he goes about it. The patience. It's scary, you know. Rocky Marciano is another guy. You watch the patience involved in their fight style. They're investing in those shots to the body.
oh
They're
yeah.
not just
No,
thinking all
no
points,
doubt.
all points. Oh, I lost a round. The world is over. You know, they're investing in. They're thinking about round 8, 9, 10, 11, depending on how far back you go. There are probably guys who are planning for, I'll get him in the 20th. Jack Johnson stopped McVeigh in one of their fights in the 20th. I
Yep.
think it was their third fight or fourth fight. I forget. I think it might have been their last fight. He stopped him in the last round.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember which one, but yeah, it was something that went down like that. Which is, hey, that's top level knowledge right there, being able to do such. Dan's has Foreman knocking out Mike Tyson in one round. A fade there, Dan. 70s or Foreman knocking out Tyson. 70s Foreman, that is, beast right there. So I'm with you there, Dan. It was tough to deal with. Strike Fighter says the most dangerous fighters in boxing ever were Harry Greb, Henry Armstrong, the 1960s middleweights in the Black Murderers Row, heavies like Joe Louis, Marciano, Chuvalo, Cleveland Williams. Cheers there, Straight Fighter. Hey, some heavy names right there, some top tier names that have graced the sport. Of
Yeah,
course,
right on. Hey,
just mentioning Greb, yeah.
real quick, Josh. So I saw something on one of these social media things, and it was a post,
Yeah.
and it was supposedly they was listed as what's the promoter's name? Eddie Hearn, the English
Yeah.
promoter.
Yeah.
It was his top 10 heavyweights or 11 heavyweights, and
Mm-hmm.
Joe Louis wasn't on it. Is there a story there I should have heard? Is there
Oh,
something
yeah, I
behind
did
that?
see
Can you
that.
explain that for the people?
Yeah, I don't remember the full list, but yeah, Eddie Hearn did release a list, and yeah, he didn't have Joe Louis on there, and he had like Anthony Joshua in the top 10 or something like that, something somewhere around there. Pretty
Yeah, I was
crazy.
surprised by that, and I don't know if I didn't see it from him. It was someone else posted it,
Yeah.
labeling it as his, so I didn't know if it was a joke. Because
But yeah,
it's hard to like be like, oh, this guy who still holds heavyweight championship records all these decades later. You know, that was like 80 years ago and shit.
yeah, he had like Sonny Liston, he had Tyson Fury, Riddick Bowe, Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, Evander Holyfield, George Foreman, Mike Tyson, Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali. That looks like
Yeah,
that's
Lennox
the
Lewis on there.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'd say Lennox. Yeah, Lennox is on there. Yeah, Lennox Lewis. I don't know if it was in a particular order, but the order that I'm seeing here is Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Sonny Liston, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, George Foreman, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk. Um, so
Yeah, I don't know how he's measuring But
But yeah,
I'm
Joe
not going to
Lewis
say he
is
doesn't
on
know his
there.
boxing, but for me, I can't remember seeing another top 10 heavyweights list that doesn't have Joe Lewis anywhere in the top 10. So I
That's a
don't know.
tough one to clear there.
Yeah, I don't know if like Joe Lewis stole his grandfather's girlfriend or something, or if there was something behind it, because that seems unrealistic, I guess. Unless you just believe the bum of the month thing, and you don't know how those guys were ranked that Lewis was fighting, so you assume that it's true. They call them bums, so it must be true. But that's Lewis didn't like that term. Ali wasn't that big. He used it to promote, but he didn't necessarily a big fan of calling guys bums,
Yeah.
even if the press were. So yeah, that's a tough one right there. But I just wanted to mention that because I saw it and I was like, is that even real? Because I have Lewis the
No,
top
I
two.
think
And
it was
I have Ali
legit.
number one and Joe Lewis two
Yeah.
for heavyweights. And
I
if
think
you're
that's what
talking
most
heavyweight
that.
champions, specifically championship stuff, I have Lewis number one.
But no, that's
Just
an
championship.
interesting one. I will say that's an interesting that yeah, he has an interesting list. Hey, I always say there's no wrong answer. Of course, your list is your list, but that's a very interesting one for sure.
Yeah, it's unusual. I gonna have to look at some other lists and see if anyone else has had the cojones to make a list and leave Joe Lewis off it.
Yeah, and he's
But I'm not taking it
you got
personally. It's just that it's hard if you look at the stats at all, or the
yeah.
opponent's list, and it's just hard not to have him register. And then you say, oh yeah,
Oh yeah, he should definitely be on there. He
you
should
gotta have
definitely
Riddick Bowe on there, or you gotta have Mike Tyson on there. And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't
yeah.
know if there's a
Gotta
list
have
I would make that would have Riddick Bowe show up. No diss on him, but based on what he actually did, have
yeah.
him above Joe Lewis, let alone on a list that Lewis didn't even make. That's weird.
So yeah, I wonder where he would have come in at, but yeah, and then he had some modern guys thrown in there, which hey, you gotta give them their props in some sense. That because I do think that Anthony Joshua of the active heavyweights right now, I do think he has the best resume of the active heavyweights.
He's
Um,
fought the toughest run of opponents, I think, of the active guys. That's fair to say.
yeah, he has. I think he has the best overall resume in terms of the variety of the individuals he fought. But of course, Usyk has the best wins. Um, So it makes it, pretty interesting. But yeah, Joshua, he'd be a tough sell there, especially if you're talking top 10 of all time. He'd be a tough sell for many. I
Yeah.
would say
I
very
mean,
tough sell there.
he does promote Joshua, so I mean, and he wanted to put together the fight with Fury. So I mean, obviously, maybe that he was putting that around when DAZN was throwing up those big money
Yeah.
offers to make the fights happen. So, take it with a huge lake of salt. But
So
it's
yeah,
just
very
unusual, and I
interesting
thought
there.
it's funny. I'm still giggling about it now, thinking about it. I've been waiting to do this show, Josh. So to the next show, I was like, I'm bringing that up. We got to talk
Oh
about that.
yeah, I just recently saw that like maybe last week or something there random. So that's why it was fresh for me when you mentioned that. But I did see I saw it on Instagram or something, but someone had posted it, and I was like, interesting there, interesting, So it's good. It's funny that you brought it back up there because yeah, I had saw it and then I just thought to myself like, wow, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then kind of moved on there. So
Did Hearn
looking
have
back
Jack
on it.
Johnson? Did Hearn have Jack Johnson on his list?
No. Jack Johnson wasn't there. Um,
Wow.
looks like he stopped at he maybe stopped at the well, I guess you could say 50s there with 50s, 60s there with Sony Liston. So he's at Ali on there and Sony Liston. So I guess that's as far back as it goes as far as his individuals there on his list. So
Yeah.
very
But
interesting.
if you count documentary hype, I can see how some of those guys would score higher. Like if you mostly watch documentaries rather than fights, or even watching the full fights, or even reading about the fighters where there isn't a lot of footage, reading about their skills,
Yeah.
or extrapolating out from the guys who there is footage of, maybe they'd score higher.
And we're gonna be doing our list, and it's gonna be interesting, folks. You're gonna see some names on there. I can tell you with mine that you probably wouldn't see on just a general list there to a certain degree. I would say. I say you're gonna see a name for sure that you're gonna be like, interesting. But I'll give you my reasoning behind such too. When you see him on there, So that's what I can say. So Random and I were supposed to do it. I have it for March 4th. Random. That might be enough time for us to solidify. I at least have my names down on a sheet there, Random, in terms of the litter that I'm picking from. It's about uh, 17 to 18 guys or whatever. So we were talking about doing our 5 honorable mention. So I'm factoring that in too, right? So I've got my list and assortment of guys there. Now it's just a matter of placement and narrowing it down fully as I go through, So
Right.
FYI
It's
there.
also greatness is such a subjective term.
Yep.
I mean, we don't set, me and you, we've kind of set the same lack of parameters that we were doing with like BL and Scrapbook, where we're not setting down criteria. Like we bring our own criteria to the table. I know we keep pushing it back, but when we do finally do that show, it'll be a lot of fun. It's just hard, man, because you think about greatness. Well, what is greatness?
Yep.
Because there's
and I don't have I can't say I don't have Anthony Joshua on there. That's a spoiler I'm gonna give you. He's not in my top 10 to 15, I guess you say, with the honorable mention there. So that's just a spoiler I'll provide for folks there.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of historical guys who maybe don't remain as famous, but if you're looking at what they did at heavyweight, how many fights they had, and maybe how many stoppages or who they fought and beat or drew with. Back in the days when there were more draws, it was more common for a close fight to just be a draw. Like if you counted that would change things a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
whoever was shouting out Harry Greb earlier.
Oh yeah, I think that's Straight Fighter. Yeah, Straight Fighter was no, yeah. Real quick here, randomly, I see. Let me go. I'm gonna catch up with some of these, but Anthony mentions of the modern guys who are the perfect analog to Ricardo Finito Lopez. Some would consider him more of a modern guy, depending on the era you talked about there, Anthony. But maybe Ivan Calderon, or is that a little too sort of cliche right there to say Ivan Calderon? Maybe Calderon there. Then mentions Jack Johnson. Straight Fighter, yeah, he was the one that was shouting out Harry Grab there, random. Straight Fighter for life. So salute there too. He says, why is there more money in boxing yet? Ruling the sport in America is not boxing, and boxers are paid very well or nothing at all, versus the old days when they all had part-time jobs and were top 10. Very interesting.
I think as far as like the periods in history when fighters were also often working jobs, that wasn't like the whole consistent decade after decade. There were certain times, but like even going back to the turn of the century, 1900s, Langford, once he was fighting full time, he didn't need to have a job. So he had like 28 appearances, and the next year he had 14, and I think it was 15 the year after that. Like that's enough to be full time and make good money, and So I think it wasn't always the case that people had to have a side job, but
some were just fighting on a continual basis, as their means for getting paid. You think about, some of those guys that were even in those eras that were like that. Jack Dillon was like that. I mean, that's why they had nearly 300 fights, that type of stuff,
Yeah, so maybe that's partly why like certain fighters who had money to start with didn't have as many fights. They didn't need to. Jimmy Britt, who we mentioned, he was a big amateur star. His family had money. His dad had some position in California, government. And so he didn't have to be. And his brother was his manager. His brother also managed Stanley Catchell, Willis Britt. And Willis had been a fighter himself of less note. But his younger brother got it on. He managed him. And so he didn't have to be in there all the time. Or certain guys, they would fight a lot. And then once they were a big enough name, they could get enough money per fight. They didn't have to fight all that frequently, but compared to their contemporaries.
Oh no doubt about it. There, Anthony mentioned, do you think Duran's footwork is underrated? Hey, you could argue. He had a way of finding his range and things of that nature. So there's something to it. I just think depends on the lens you look at it from. Of course, that version of him on that night against Leonard in that second fight, it wasn't the best version of him, but hey, that's not his best version. But if you look at the guy who say he was with Barkley or something like that. I mean, I think he showed even by virtue of how he was able to go up in weight that yeah, there was something there to it. So it wasn't all just power, you know. Um, so
Yeah, that's a good point.
he was still a skilled guy for sure.
I'd say absolutely underrated for his footwork
Oh yeah,
because that footwork is. Uh, oh, Dan says Holyfield's underrated. Another guy with great footwork because that's
yep,
how you get into position to deliver telling blows is with that footwork.
oh yeah,
If you're not exclusively slipping and stuff like, but you kind of got to get your base to where it needs to be, and that extra layer of intelligence makes a lot of difference. So some of the hardest punchers, it's not that they're not scientific about it; it's just that the effect is so cataclysmic. People focus on other stuff. Kid McCoy back in the day,
oh yeah,
ferocious puncher, but like he wasn't just
oh yeah.
because he had a way of punching; he was like a way of setting it up. Fitzsimmons
Mm-hmm.
and or Tommy Hearns.
Oh yeah.
It's maneuvering into weight. Lots of guys can throw hard at the air. It's
Oh
getting
yeah.
into that
Tommy can block.
position to know when to come across.
Yeah,
Hearns
Tommy
had
can
that.
block. He can move well. If you look at him, and okay, he was outboxing Sugar Ray Leonard when they were fighting that first fight. People recall, and we know that Sugar Ray, we know he can box. You know what I'm saying? So, the Tommy,
Yes.
yeah, he's very skilled.
Yeah, it's funny when you see people change their style to try and throw someone off,
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
Hagler
very,
Hearns, it wasn't like perhaps
oh yeah.
exactly what people were expecting at the time. The first Leonard Duran fight,
They were going in.
that was because like, why is Ray Leonard coming on the inside? Why is he all in there? Like he was doing okay, he was holding his own, but why are you in there where the other guy's like
Oh
the
yeah.
expert?
No, good fight right there. that is a good one for sure. Anthony mentioned Prime Vitaly Klitschko before the injuries versus Tyson Fury. Oh, that would be an interesting one right there. Two big guys going at it. Who has the better jab? I probably lean Vitaly Klitschko since that's probably his primary or top trait there. That's an interesting one there. I go Vitaly.
Yeah, I'm not even sure, but I think Fury, he's a talent, but I think he's lucky he's fighting in the era where you can get away with hardly fighting if you're famous enough. And I think he gets people sometimes overblow him because he hasn't been as tested as other people. He has been tested. Let's not get it wrong, but not as much as other historical boxers. And it would be fair to say that about Usyk, although Usyk has had so much success, it's hard to argue against that success. But there's, the more fights you have in a division, the more likely you are to either have a bad night or run into a bad stylistic matchup or an excellent game plan. And so, people
Vitaly's got a lot of fights there. Him and Vladimir, by comparison, even for modern guys, they have a lot. Certainly, Vladimir, I forget where Vitaly finished at, but he still, I think, has more than Fury.
Oh yeah, because they have didn't he have 60-something total fights?
Yeah, it might have been
fights compared to. But it's also
Vlad
like with Duran. Duran had a lot of fights in his career. Like we think of him as a more modern guy, or like in between the old school and the modern guys. But he had a lot of
47, 47 for Vitaly. So I thought he had a little bit more than that, but 47.
Maybe
but
his brother had some.
He had probably around 70-ish, 70 or something like that, 70 something.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, Josh. Do you remember offhand? So remember, gosh, it's got to be 3 years ago now. They were having the big buzz about lightweight, right? And they were trying to crown the new four kings of lightweight.
Yeah.
Who was it? Who was it they were talking about? Who was in that mix?
Oh, well, we never got to see all the fights, but it was a combination. At one point, you had Vasily Lomachenko there at 135. You had Teofimo Lopez. You had Devin Haney. You had Ryan Garcia, but you also had Tank Davis that ended up being there at one time. But generally, it's a combination of those. And then you had Shakur Stevenson get thrown in the mix as well. But generally, I think it was more so that Teofimo, Devin Haney, Lomachenko, Tank, Ryan Garcia. So kind of 4 or 5 in the mix there at that particular time. But of course, some of them never even fought each other. And hey, it all as it would turn out, Devin Haney was the one who fought more of the guys in that mix. And hey, he has probably the best resume of the mix there. Interestingly, outside of what, of course, Loma was able to do. But just thinking about sort of those other younger guys that were factored in the mix there with them as well. But because realistically, because Loma he had come up. So if you look at it between like Tank Haney, Ryan Garcia, and Teofimo Lopez, uh, yeah, I think Devin Haney has cleared as far as what he's been able to do thus far, and I think he has more fights than all of them too, or maybe him and Tank are similar or closer in terms of number of overall fights.
Yeah. Oh, shout out, Span Man. Get your ass back to work. No, I'm just kidding.
Shout out
Thanks for
Miter Span,
showing up.
the guy right there.
That's what's
Shout
up.
out to Miter. He's worth checking out there, folks. If you don't know, go check out the man Miter. Hey, trust me, he knows his boxing history. He does his thing right there. And we're gonna do something at some point, some kind of collaboration there. Maybe hey, all three of us there, random, and we're doing some kind of discussion or whatever. But Miter, he knows his stuff, and he even knows his stuff going back to the bare knuckle days. Even when you're talking to Tom Molyneux, Bill Richmonds, you know,
cool.
we're thinking about them, Tom Cribb, and that whole thing, and even Mendoza, and the other guy, he put me on game on this picture that I thought was Tom Molyneux. It's not Tom Molyneux. It's another fighter who was a bare knuckler from back in the day. This black fighter, I can't think of his name right now, but Miter knows who I'm talking about there. But shout out to Miter, folks. Check him out. Go give him a follow, subscribe, because hey, he knows his stuff there for sure.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So back to the supposed four kings, because like when people were throwing that around, certain people they took it personally because they were like, "Why are you calling these guys four kings? They need to fight each other if that's the case, right? It needs to be imperative that they all get their groove on," and they didn't. And so looking back, it's like, yeah, that's why you don't say it. You know, you can start calling them that when it's all coming together, but it never played out that way where it was like, now we absolutely must see them all, these great stylists all face each other because they all have their own space in the public imagination. They seem to be destined to go at it. There's a reason that the four kings, why they endure, their legacy endures, because not just the styles and their individual dominance, but they did all get it on.
Greatness is hard to replicate at times, you know, and we didn't quite get that with this supposed four kings era right there, with some of them not even fighting each other. But there could have been a crazy combination, but ultimately kind of fizzled out. We got some of the fights because T.O. did fight Lomachenko. He just fought Shakur Stevenson, but that's a little bit different. But we never got him against Haney or Tank or something. We never got Tank versus Haney. We did get Tank versus Garcia. We got Haney Garcia. We got so you had him, Tank Garcia. You had Teofimo. He did. So yeah, he got Shakur. He got Loma. Yeah, so it just didn't quite work out. And some of them have some common opponents and all that stuff. But yeah, certainly not on the level of what those guys were doing back then. And then you throw in Benitez because he's in the mix as well there around that time, though, when you think of the four kings. So sort of like how it's really a little bit more than those four. Benitez is one of those guys sort of as well who was there in the mix.
So I remember, how many of the kings did he face? Because I think he fought, was it 3 of them, but not all 4?
Yeah, Leonard. So he fought Leonard. So Leonard Duran. Was Benitez Hearns? Did Benitez Hearns did they fight off? So then it'll be a matter of him and Hagler. I can't recall though. So it's either Hearns or Hagler between the two.
Maybe fought 3 of the 4.
Wait, no, so somebody knows there. I can't think of here, but Benitez, he was a beast there.
Yeah, he was really good. There are probably some good fantasy fights you could slap him into.
Oh yeah, hey, Straight Fighter for Life says Tiger was greater than Foster. Yeah, hey, you look at their careers. Yeah, I think you make a good point there, Straight Fighter. Yeah, Dick Tiger had a damn good career. No, that's no disrespect about Foster, who had a damn good career himself. But yeah, as far as where they clear, where they rate, yeah, you have to hold Dick Tiger in higher regard. Interestingly, he probably doesn't have the same name value. Certainly here. Here in modern times, you think about it, people are probably going to know Bob Foster a bit more, but Dick Tiger, one hell of a fighter right there, and he probably would rate higher career wise there. No, probably to it. Definitely the case there. Straight fighter. Matters fan says Tiger Flowers versus Dick Tiger would be interesting. Tequila, Jose Dapalas versus El Reda Wilfred Benitez. Speaking of the devil, or Felix Trinidad versus either one of those guys would be cool. Yeah, those would be some interesting ones right there. As well. Flowers, Tiger. Yeah, classical matchup right there. Just thinking about it from a stylistic standpoint. The defensive prowess of Tiger Flowers, seeing how it would mesh there with Dick Tiger. That's a very interesting one. Very interesting one right there. Probably could go either way depending on the day there as well. There might Napolis Benitez, that'd be a damn good one. Or that combination of Benitez or Felix Trinidad. Yeah, those will be some good fights right there. I think you could.
Here's one for you.
Napolis,
How about Rocky Marciano versus the cruiserweight version of James Toney?
Rocky Marciano versus James Toney. Oh, cruiserweight version. Well, that'll be excuse me.
It'd be a weird looking fight, but I feel like that would be so extremely entertaining.
That would be interesting. Because of course Tony was crafty, tough, crafty fighter for sure. Rocky Marciano nonstop, kind of coming forward, even when he was in there with some guys who were the better, I guess, technical boxers. He found a way. You know what I'm saying? So that would be interesting one right there. Hard to count out Rocky in that situation.
So I think both guys took some shots, but not necessarily a lot of flush shots. Yeah. But I wonder about Tony with his great technique, though. But if he'd have to make an adjustment, because Marciano, even though he had the short arms, he wasn't a guy you could just take shots from, even on the guard. You couldn't just let him start to break you down that way. And I wonder if that would affect the stylistic matchup. But that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that'll be interesting on there. Random day and good one right there. Hard to count out either guy. But we know that Rocky Marciano is going to be in tip-top shape. As far as Tony, no, he would have to be. I think if he's going to try and beat somebody like Rocky, and therefore, yeah, you would likely lean Rocky Marciano given such, Just think about it from that perspective.
I think I agree with you there, 86. I think the power and the conditioning, but it's a good fight while it lasts. It's interesting stylistically, but I would lean Rocky to eventually win it. Especially if they're going like 15 rounds or something.
It makes you wonder what ideally would have been Tony's best weight, because he was able to do good at pretty much all of the weights, but think about him at heavyweight, he was really kind of just like a guy who was overweight, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he just had that fearlessness and all that experience and that ring craft from all the sparring he would do, but he's just he's one of the guys I most enjoy watching, because he doesn't put a lot into all of his shots. Sometimes he'll put it in, but a lot of times he's not. But the technique in it just adds up.
And when they say throwback fighter too, he definitely the definition of that. You can just drop him in pretty much any era with his style and technique, as you note there.
Yeah, and he had big arms, so he could take a lot of shots on his guard. And he had some padding there when he was at the heavier weight, so he could take some shot in the sides, the obliques and the ribs and whatnot without just falling apart. But then you take Rocky, he had a special amount of power, so the pounds per square inch that's being inserted into your mass, if you're going to let it get tagged, is like equation changing.
Oh, yeah.
Sam Langford was a little bit like that, but Langford had longer arms than Rocky by a good bit. So,
which is crazy.
So Langford could fight at range, whereas Rocky was specifically, I'm going to go underneath and come up inside you and then lay the damage, chop the tree down, and then I'm going to get you. And it worked.
The measurables can be interesting, and sometimes some people just they're better at using their measurables in a way that helps them stand out, and they take advantage of that in every way. Because ideally, you would think that for like a Marciano short arm guy like that, his success at heavyweight is just like some would think maybe baffling, size wise, but how he used his size, his tools, and the advantages that he did have, I mean, it just worked out for him, and he mastered what he could do with what he had.
Yeah, and you can also see when, like, after he'd retired and he's in photos with these other boxers, he's not a small guy. He doesn't have, like, tiny hands or tiny forearms. He's got forearms like legs. He just
Yeah.
had short arms for his height
Oh yeah.
for a heavyweight, but he wasn't a small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with Joe
Not a
Louis. People
tiny
talk
dude.
like he was a midget. Oh, he's
Yeah.
too small. It's like, have you seen video of Joe Louis when he was older and he's around these younger guys, and you see he's a big guy. He got a bigger head than any of them.
Yeah. He's
You
like
know, he's a
6'2".
big. He was big. Like he was,
Yeah.
but when he was fully trained and had a slim waist like a dancer, you know, of course he's not going to weigh as much as later.
Yeah, I think people sometimes that can get kind of lost when looking at some of these fighters of the past, but yeah, and it's interesting that is the case, but if you were there with them face to face at that time, or even then them being here now, I think you would kind of realize it a bit more that they weren't as they weren't small as you may think, relative to I think sometimes we compare some to some of the bigger heavyweights that we have in this era. But that being said, it's not like they were just small guys in the same way that like Usyk. If you're next to him, yeah, he's not just gonna be like a little small guy. He's gonna be not as big as Anthony Joshua, but he's not a small guy. Same with Joe Louis. You were next to him. He's not a small guy in that sense, like you're putting it there random. Yeah, he's not as big as, of course, Tyson Fury, but still, I mean, the guy's 6'2", 200 pounds. I mean, he's not just a little dude, you know what I'm saying? And that's him,
Slim trim. Yeah, he wasn't,
you know.
didn't have a lot of extra on him.
And if he had, say he's out of shape and he just, wanted to be bigger or something, yeah, he'd be 220. Let's say he's in the 220 range right there. Just thinking about that 6'2", 220. So he's not just like a little dude, and I think that sometimes get lost in the thing. So even with a guy like Marciano, when he cuts down, like you said, in weight or whatever, but if you're standing next to him, or if you're like, you as a regular person there, you're just next to him, you'll see that you look at his hands and then his makeup and all of that stuff, you'll see that, it's not like he's just some tiny dude that is, okay, it's like, oh my gosh, how's he able to do this? I
Right.
mean, there's a
And there's not
science to
being
it.
right. Like size isn't absolutely everything. And some guys are pretty
Oh yeah,
scary and they're solid. They're just not giants. Like Mike Tyson's like that. You look at him back in his prime, that gigantic neck and stuff, he was a unit, right? He just wasn't
yeah,
overall super heavy. But he didn't have a lot of extra on him either. You know, he was a slim trim,
oh yeah,
still pretty big fella. So I think that throws people off. Like today, what people consider fight condition is different for whatever reason. Like not everyone's coming in ripped, or if they are, they're lifting weights just to add
oh
mass.
yeah,
But they didn't necessarily always want to lift weights in boxing because stamina and speed and agility, it's different kind. You want that that fast twitch muscle.
yeah.
You don't want just like, hey, you know how much I bench? It's like, well, how fast can you get your fist on this guy's face? It was a big factor in fighting.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was
Hold on a minute.
Ali just
Hold on a minute. Is he talking about? Oh, because he
this,
disrespected Lewis. They kind of played with each other though.
this
I
yeah,
thought you meant the whole pay-per-view thing or the closed circuit thing, because that did not help boxing.
yeah,
Making big
and
fights closed circuit.
and what I was gonna say is it was sort of like it's one of those things, and you can say it's I guess a heavyweight tradition, or at least it was in a sense there in terms of the relationship there between. If you look at Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, and Muhammad Ali, that dynamic there, that trio, they had an interesting relationship there from a heavyweight perspective because there were crossover between each of them in terms of at least when Lewis was fighting, Jack Johnson was alive. He was able to be around Joe Louis and so forth. Then the same was the case when Ali was fighting, and of course Joe Louis was then the elder statesman there, and there was an interesting dynamic between, particularly with those three right there, just an interesting dynamic because each of them at the time were viewed as the top heavyweight in their respective eras and such. And of course, when that happens, you also get the discussions, the chatter of the previous eras and those who are considered the top heavyweights. I'm sure if you ask some, Jack Johnson was the greatest of all time. You ask some, Joe Louis was the greatest of all time. Same with Muhammad Ali. You had that very interesting dynamic between the three of them specifically that made it a bit more intriguing, especially considering that, like I said, there was that sort of period in which they all got, or at least relative to that sort of passing of the torch in some sense, they were alive to see their successor as far as who was being considered to be the greatest heavyweight of that period and potentially all of all time at that particular or at particular time frames in which each of them, or at least depending on who the fighter was, when they were both alive to witness it from the past and future perspective, past and present perspective, I guess you can say there. So it makes it an interesting dynamic if you get what I'm saying there, just knowing
Yeah.
that was the case. And I think that added to it.
Or even like when you see Ali's on Arsenio with Tyson,
Oh yeah.
like so like where you have Tyson was the man, and then there's and Ali's, he's obviously he's older, he's infirm, but
Mm-hmm.
where he was saying, oh, he wouldn't want to fight him because he hit too hard, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but like on the thing about Ali and
That
Lewis,
was
like
a shit.
Ali admitted he talked a lot of crap, and he said he never really, like later in his life, he said never really believed it. He just wanted people to try and buy the ticket so they'd come see him lose. But he never believed he was the greatest. But I have heard stuff where he gives Lewis a ton of credit. I don't think you can not. But that's
Yeah.
sometimes it's different
Yeah,
for guys
certainly.
while they're competing. Now, Jack Johnson, he didn't seem to think that Joe Louis would have been a match for the greats of his own era,
Yeah.
like Langford, Jeanette, and McVeigh. Like he was, especially, or himself in his prime. Johnson seemed so like even as dominant as Lewis was, not everyone. There was a debate about, okay, well, how would he match up against the golden age greats of the teens? You could throw Harry Wills in there too.
Oh yeah. 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 Hey, yeah. You could throw them in. So yeah, you always had those guys who were in and around there in the mix, and they must be counted as well. Yeah, but it's certainly that there's an interesting dynamic between from Johnson to Lewis and Lewis to Ali. And I think it's just the brevity of the time for each of them, what they represented. Just thinking about it from that perspective, I think that adds to it as well because Ali was very much vocal. Joe Louis wasn't as vocal in the same way as Ali or even Jack Johnson, and that makes it interesting as well there. But I think there was a respect amongst each of them in terms of just knowing that, of course, these were great fighters in general, but also there might have been some of that, of course, when you're kind of on your game in your bag, it's your time. Yeah, you want to. It's hard
Yeah.
to say that someone is
You can see that
better
with a
or
lot of
whatever for some
rivalries
of
or
it.
would be intergenerational rivalries where the way guys describe it can change over time, either because they're just on their whim or because they're in a different mindset when they're being asked at a
Hector,
different time. You can see that, but like some of the more recent rivalries, the way they talk about each other can change day to day. But there's generally a grudging respect at a minimum
oh
because
yeah,
they know that like inherent they just kind of instinctively know, well, your legacy's tied up with these guys. So if you talk too
yeah,
much crap, winning or losing against the guy, if people believe you too much and you're talking crap, then it lessens your own
yeah, but yeah,
legacy. So you gotta at some point you gotta show them respect. Like
but yeah,
Ali and
you're
Joe
right.
Frazier.
You're right.
Ali gave Joe Frazier a lot of shit during their primes, but later on, he was one of the main guys. Like, you know how great this guy was?
Yeah,
So that's something that's worth noting, that things can change over time.
but when you're in that element there in that moment, yeah, it can be different, because of course Frazier, he wasn't fond of the way that Ali spoke of him and treated him when he had at least tried to treat Ali with kindness, even helped him out when Ali was out of the sport there for that period. So you can see how those tensions can just continue to lie, even when they sort of made up or came to some agreement, cordialness there even later in life, but it was always something that was still there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
and I
was
saw a
apparent.
thing, Josh. I saw a YouTube short, and it was Frotch. He was being
Yeah.
asked about Calzaghe. Yo, he was very great. He was very
Oh, yeah.
gracious. I was different tack than I seem to remember him taking. Talking about, yeah, he was obviously was so great. Maybe he's the best of that era, and
Yeah.
he was going. And even the interview was pushing it. Be like, a lot of people were picking to beat you, and he's like, well, maybe you can see why people might think that. And I was like, wow, I
Oh
don't know if
yeah.
this is AI or if it's a joke or if it's just that he's in a
Yeah.
totally different place. Now, some guys, that competitive fire never leaves.
Yeah.
Do you remember they had that wonderful panel discussion of super middleweights?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's
and
like
you can tell Steve
yeah.
Collins is still pissed he didn't get that Roy Jones fight. And he stormed off he didn't storm, but he left, man. He was ready to fight right then, man. He was kind of trying to push
I'm
him
trying to
about
see if I saw the whole thing. I know what you're talking about
right,
because it
because
was
Roy
him.
had just finished saying, like, I was a giver. If you wanted, I'd give it. And he's like, well, then why couldn't I get that fight? And then he got mad and he left a little bit after that.
Oh
You could
yeah.
see he'd still fight him. Yeah, I like Collins,
Yeah.
man. He was a fiery character, but he trained
Yeah.
hard. He had stamina and he had heart, and he could recover from some tremendous shots.
Collins. Yeah, yeah. Because it was him, Calzaghe, Jones, and then Eubank. Was Eubank Senior there?
Yep.
Him, Nigel
I don't.
Mann. Was Nigel there or no? No.
I
Was he
think
there?
maybe Ben was one of them. Couldn't make it. I can't remember if it was Ben. Maybe couldn't. They said there was one.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I've seen the whole thing, but I've
I'll
certainly
post it
seen
in the
different parts
comments.
of it.
I'll go find the thing and I'll post it in the comments of the stream here.
Yeah, it's worth checking out, folks, if you haven't seen it. I know
That's
I've seen
great
parts of it. I can't remember if I've seen the whole thing because I don't remember the part where Collins was stormed off or whatever, but that's pretty
He
funny.
left. He was like, he was still smiling, but you could tell, you can feel these guys, they're gracious, but
Tension
no,
there,
because he
huh?
was mad because he was kind of like having to listen to Roy Jones saying, I was a giver, if you wanted it, you got it. And that was his whole frustration was not being able to get a Roy Jones fight. So he
But
was,
at that point, yeah, Roy never did fight outside of the U.S. You had to come over there to him. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. Interesting for sure, though, right? Yeah, very interesting. But yeah,
I think it's because of the amount of time that, especially in like the gloved era, like the U.S. was the center of boxing, right? So
yeah,
in the gloved
yeah,
era, so that remained. That was one of the things with Calzaghe. Like, when you gonna go fight in America? And then Jeff
yeah,
Lacey came over and fought him in Manchester, and he beat him so badly. Then Kessler came over and fought him in Cardiff, I think it was.
yeah.
Well,
Lacey
so
got destroyed there. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I do recall
but I
that.
I got a lot of respect for Lacey. Like, not so much his team. His team should have pulled him out of that fight. The last 4 or 5 rounds, he didn't need that in his life, but for his
Oh yeah,
career's sake. But
oh yeah,
he fought with heart, man. He was still trying to clock him to the end of the fight. And there are a lot of
yeah.
guys who would have folded or just not gotten up or not had the heart. So I mean, Lacey had a championship mindset. I give him a lot of
He
credit
didn't
for that
have
loss.
that skill set to deal with the likes of Calzaghe.
He was
Yeah,
overconfident. So if he had not been overconfident, they hadn't been all like they were doing, like, it reminded me of Wilder, where he's training in the gym and everyone's like cheering, like that's the show.
yeah, yeah.
Like the best boxing gyms I've been in, no one cheers your ass. You get your work on. It doesn't matter who you are. You're there to work.
Right,
Shut up and
right.
work, and don't stop cheering and clapping for guys and stuff. Like, you don't need to hype them up. They're there to grind.
Yeah,
It's
no.
humbling. You
Gym
just hear that
time, the grind time for sure.
of the speed bag, and you see the guys in the ring. Someone's over there jumping rope. The guy's stretching. The other guy's on the treadmill or something. The other guy's doing medicine ball stuff. The other guy's got the string on the ground. He's doing his angles, doing his different degrees.
Repetition.
And then
Just
there's the bag
repetition
work.
too.
Yeah, and you
Same
guys go through.
thing.
It's humbling. But when they were talking about Lacey and his coaches all talking him up in the pre-fight, and Lacey just standing there in the ring soaking it up, like building his ego. Don't say that in front of your guy, man. You're supposed to be a little nervous. You're supposed to make sure this killer is not going to get past you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great interview, Dan, where,
Bumming them up.
Ali's
Yeah,
kind of joking, because he's like, here you are
yeah.
talking about the greatest fighter of all time, Joe Louis, and I'm sitting right here. And then Louis was funny. He said, we used to have a thing called a bum in the Monk Club. He'd say, wait, you call me a bum? He's like, will you be in the club?
Yeah,
That was a
yeah.
nice
I
little
remember
way.
that.
But that's a
That's
good
funny.
fight. Prime versus Prime. That's a good fight.
Yeah, no, that is.
Joe
Damn
Louis
good
knew
fight.
how to get to the body, and he had a good jab, and he knew how to stuff a jab to land a jab. Lewis was
Mhm.
at his best. Lewis was a scary dude, and the size wasn't so much different. I think that's a very competitive fight.
Like you have people who are definitive that Joe Louis would win, just as you do have those who are definitive that Ali would win. Some far on each side, you know. But it would be a very interesting one, damn good one though.
Great fight. No, I think that's one of those instances where the top two fighters for me in the division's history are also a very competitive matchup head to head. Doesn't have to be that way
Oh yeah,
because their
Vinny
styles might
Briscoe.
line up wrong for certain guys. Where even though they have the resume, that in a specific lineup against the other great in that class,
Yeah, and
it could be
to
tough.
Anthony, to your question earlier, in terms of Hector Camacho Sr., hey, depends on his overall involvement, but he was definitely a personality, an exciting personality in the sport there for sure. Just
Oh, Benny
Hector Camacho
Briscoe, he's a good
Sr.
fighter.
Yeah, Benny Briscoe. Hey, that guy could do the shoulder roll right there. If you're talking about a shoulder roller, but
Philly
yeah, a real
style,
true
right?
fighter right there.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before on your channel and on my own that back in the day, like the early 1900s, Philly, you could only fight 6 rounds, right? No decisions. So if you didn't stop the guy and then no one fouled out, then it's officially it's a no decision. You get a newspaper win or loss
Oh yeah,
from
yeah.
the consensus style from the main newspapers. But so people could still bet on it. But only having 6 rounds to work gets you a lot of different experience. So a lot of these guys were able to fight every week or two, specifically because you get a lot of guys on a card. If every fight on the card is 6 rounds,
Oh yeah. No,
and
you're
then you
right.
get a lot of
For sure.
experience, a lot of varied experience, a lot of powerful. But I wonder if that's contributed to that Philly style, that aggressive style, because it used to be such a long period of time was limited rounds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, no doubt. Hey, shout out to Rock Chalk True Crime. Hey, cheers out to your Rock Chalk, folks. Be sure to check her out. Go give her a subscribe, follow there, Rock Chalk True Crime. And she mentions, hey Josh, remember that trooper that died in a boxing match, finally for being charged over that? Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Rightfully so. And this was a story, I forget where it took place. It was somewhere in the Northeast. I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, it was something where this guy, I guess they had a tradition of making guys box or something in some capacity, but this wasn't necessarily boxing because this guy was like beat to death and it was like a crazy situation. So it was not, and they tried to say it was just because he was boxing, but if you look at his injuries and all of that stuff, it was some crazy stuff. Like he was basically just bludgeoned
Oh my
by
God,
a
that's
group of
terrible.
guys, and that's what ultimately ended up happening. But it's a story that was out there. Thanks for sharing there, Rock Chalk. I remember we talked about this. This was a couple of years ago, I want to say at this point. So yeah, it's pretty wild, pretty crazy situation there. Thanks for sharing, Rock Chalk. True crime, but be sure to check out Rock Chalk for sure. She does her thing there.
All right, here's a matchup for you, Josh City. Jake Paul,
Yeah.
Butterbean.
That'll be interesting. Shucks. Well, Butterbean, he was good for 4 rounds. You know what I'm saying? So he had a lot of experience in fights by comparison. So shoot, in a little 4 rounder, yeah, you gotta
I'm
go with.
leaning Butterbean by
I go
stoppage.
Butterbean.
I got to
Um,
lean Butterbean. I think it'd be a wonderful highlight.
Yeah, Butterbean. Yeah, despite don't let the look fool you. He knew what he was doing in there. They had on wrestling one time. There was this
Oh yeah,
guy.
they have Bart Gunn. He
Yeah,
clocked the
Bart
shit
Gunn or
out. They
whatever.
stopped that mess. They were like, no more of that.
And that was
Yeah.
like, yeah, he shouldn't have been in there just because he beat a bunch of wrestlers who don't box. But you saw what happened. He was in there with Butterbean. But that being said, yeah, I think that yeah, I would lean Butterbean, but Jake Paul, I feel like he'd be in there and he wouldn't just, I don't think he would engage in a way there to get himself knocked out like as soon as it started or anything of that nature.
Yeah,
Uh,
I feel like there would be a lot of stalking and Butterbean getting hit but not hurt.
yeah, yeah,
And then Paul would take a wrong step. He'd zig when he should zag. And then it might end very quickly, but it might take rounds to get to that point. But I just think
yeah. I think
a flush
Paul
shot
would
from
be
that dude
cautious.
is an extremely dangerous thing. And if experience is
Yeah,
some of the way around that.
yeah. I think he'd be cautious, sort of like in there with Anthony Joshua, where I guess practically running at times, you know, doing what he could to stay awake. So I think he would do that with
Yeah.
Butterbean for
Yo,
as long as he could as well, you
who's the
know.
guy who fought Larry Holmes? Is it Tex Cobb? How about Jake Paul, Tex Cobb? Was that his name, Tex Cobb?
Tex Scott. Oh well, yeah, you probably go with Tex Scott. Yeah. Now Larry Holmes did fight Butterbean, older Larry Holmes, and he beat Butterbean.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
this was Larry Holmes. He might have been in his late 40s or 50s or something like that. So, um, yeah, I'd favor just thinking about it from a Jake Paul perspective. Jake Paul, yeah. I mean, all the legitimate heavyweights, yeah, he have a problem with them,
Yeah.
just in general.
I guess I've been so overloaded with people trying to build them up. If you're beating up past prime guys or smaller guys and stuff, you can call
Yeah.
yourself maybe a prospect. They're trying to like make it more than that. So now I'm
Oh
kind of
yeah,
laughing,
yeah.
thinking
No,
about some of these other fantasy matchups. Now the balloon pops.
no, he wouldn't fare too well with yeah, even some of
But
the
Tex wasn't supposed to really be in there with someone on Holmes level, so that's why I
yeah.
brought him up. He was a tough guy, and I think he'd done kickboxing too, so he could fight.
Yeah, I think yeah, you favor Tex over him. I don't know who you would really favor Jake Paul over, except for someone else who has a similar sort of background, or guys who are fighters from another sport like
Have we had
MMA
enough
who weren't
influence?
strikers, you know what I'm saying?
I know. I wish we had some footage of Jack Monroe. That's the amateur, the
Yeah.
minor who knocked down Jim Jeffries, and then after he had some pro fights, he actually lost very quickly to him as a pro. Yeah, I mean, he got stopped by the first significant punch, ended the fight.
Oh
but
yeah.
he did get the best of him in a 4-rounder. So that'd be interesting. You can would he be an influencer type thing? Like, have there been enough of them through history to do a top 5 all time?
Talking about like Jake Paul
crossover fighters.
There have been, of course, we've had maybe if they weren't known as influencers, we've had some crossover fights and all that stuff. Well, of course, there's enough of them fighting now that you could out of this bunch, but from a historical perspective, I don't know. I think they have to be kind of weighed with themselves because they have their thing, because you have this misfits that goes on as well, and they're doing competitions, and they're in the double digits. Of course, I don't know if they're in the teens or the 20s now, but they do Misfits Boxing 13 or Misfits Boxing 20. I don't know what number they're on now, but now it's like a regular thing. So you can do a matchup of or a mix of an assortment of them. But the further we go back, I think it's less influencer in that sense. But you do have the crossovers. When we talk about Ali and Inoki, but Inoki is more wrestling and shoot wrestling type thing. And then, you have other little exhibition style matchups that took place.
Yeah, it'd have to be a conglomerate category, because influencer is more social media age type thing.
And that's a regular thing now. That's what I'm saying with that Misfits thing. It's a regular thing now. So I think you could, in theory, do a top 5 influencer boxers. And of course, I think Jake Paul would rank up there. If not 1, he'd be 2 or 3. So it's a lot of KSI. Him and the KSI do, because KSI, I think he's tied to the Misfits thing. KSI.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He did come up through that, right?
Like, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know of this. Like, I only knew of them. Like, I found out about KSI. I would see on the Mayweather Boxing Channel, they do these fight predictions, and occasionally they ask him a prediction because he was training at the Mayweather gym, I guess, at one point. I don't know if he still is. And I didn't know who it was, and I would just see this have KSI. Then later on, I found out that he was a YouTube guy or whatever, and he was doing that fight with, I think, Logan Paul or something. I think he fought Logan Paul first or something like that. And
I get him confused, but
novel
fights is not new. It hasn't always been in a boxing rule set, but crossover fights is always funny. For some, it's just not always the same group of fans.
I think they have their legit thing now, because, like I said, they're doing these misfit boxing things in their pay-per-view, and they're still going. So people are buying these pay-per-views. Right. And when I've seen the crowds there are people there. Seemingly, I'm sure some tickets might be comp, but there's seemingly a good number of people that are there watching it, knowing that it's just like influencer, YouTube type personalities and all that stuff boxing each other. So they definitely have a place here in the sport, because otherwise they wouldn't still be doing it. They have a deal with the zone, so people are into it.
So yeah, so there is a spot for 'em. Maybe it's a different fan base, but it's all a variation of a rule set.
I even know some of them. I know there's this guy named Salt Poppy. I have no idea where he came from or anything. I just remember seeing him box on one of these things. His name's Salt Poppy, but he was like a YouTube guy or something like that. So some of them I even know now, and I didn't know. And then I know some other guys by face just because I saw them fight. But I think they started on YouTube or some social media thing. So it's an interesting, very interesting thing. But it's here. It's not going anywhere as far as I can tell. So it's going to be around.
Especially in the social media age. So the giants of social media, if they're going to have a fight, that's like the world is a high school and the popular kids are fighting. Yeah, you want to go watch it if you're a certain kind of temperament.
Yeah, hey, there's something to it.
It's just not important necessarily to people who are just thinking about skill and ranking and things like that. It's like a different kind of standard, but it doesn't make it not entertaining.
Hey, I'd rather those with issues settle their differences there in the ring. Why not? Hey,
there's no harm in that. Put up or shut up.
Hey, shout out to Lito, says, glad to find your channel. Really appreciate your inside knowledge on the sport and that I have grown to love. Keep up the good work to you both. Hey, appreciate you there, Lito.
Thanks, 903.
Appreciate you there, my friend. Thanks for dropping by, showing some love here with Random Acoustic Thoughts, folks. We're 2 hours in, of course, which is usually the case when we talk boxing. Excuse me. So, we appreciate you there. Lito, here goes some other questions that we have out here. Oh yeah, definitely all time great there, Dan. As you know, Calzaghe was on the show, beat the shit out of them all on the panel and never said a word. Oh yeah, Calzaghe, he was pretty stoic there for sure.
Right. I think it's also in the context of the modern boxing era where the zero is so important. He kept his zero, so right there, it just narrows it down. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about all time or resume or anything, but going out without a loss as a pro does count more today than maybe in other times.
Oh yeah.
Because in other times it'd be the number of scalps on your resume. How many different greats and how many times and great rivalries and things like that. Ray Robinson, he has losses. A lot of the all-time greats have losses, but it's also then it's relative to who are they fighting. That wasn't the only thing that made them great. Was just always winning and never losing or tying. So Calzaghe, in that kind of discussion in the context, he doesn't have to say much. You have to go back to when he was a teenager amateur, the last time he lost a fight. So it's pretty good. But to me, like looking at resumes, I rate him highly amongst the super middleweights who've officially been super middleweights.
Yeah.
But I don't rate him that highly all time because of the resume, like as far as plus size middleweights. Like people who would fight, because you're not always weighing in, guys who would be about 168. There are a lot of greats, all-time greats who floated around that weight. But I'd say Calzaghe, he did great with what he had. He wasn't in the richest era, and he has a couple. Is Kessler in the Hall of Fame now?
Mikhail Kessler. I don't feel like he is.
Okay. I'm not saying he necessarily deserves to be. I didn't follow the rest of his career that tight, but
I think he will get there, but I don't think he is right now.
So, you have Jones and Hopkins as great opponents. Eubank as a someone would call him a great fighter, but certainly was a successful fighter, a high-level fighter at that weight, establishing win for him. So, but there are other resumes that are just so ridiculously big, it's kind of gets silly. Even if you take out all the all-time greats, some of these resumes are still enormous. And not just for the main guys, like someone like Marcel Sudan.
Oh yeah.
Or, Jake LaMotta. Jake LaMotta's level of opposition is absolutely stupid. There's no one in the sport today as far as many great fighters as that guy had on his resume.
It is.
It's just not the same thing. You don't have enough great fighters, admittedly great fighters to have those fights. Tough, man. I'm not saying it's the athlete's fault. They don't. It's just structurally different now.
Yeah, Kessler isn't in there. Now, I think that he will eventually get in there. Some probably think he probably shouldn't. But I feel like there's some comparable people that are in there that I feel like he'll get in there.
Who was it they put in there based on getting beat up by Dempsey? Furpo, was it?
Yeah, Luis Angel Firpo, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one that stands out to me. Is like I
He
can
didn't actually
understand
win the
why.
world title, right? Yeah, he never won the world title.
He clocked Dempsey real good, but then he got knocked
Yeah, he
down a
clocked
bunch
it.
of times and lost. He
Yeah,
doesn't really
damn good
have
fight.
any.
Yeah.
Doesn't
He
have a
beat Jess
lot.
Willard. He had to win over Jess Willard.
Yeah, he just didn't have a whole lot in the win column
Yeah, he
compared to
didn't.
like a lot of what was traditionally got people into the hall. Like,
Yeah,
who are
he's a
your
big
great
time
opponents and
puncher.
how did you do?
Yeah, I think Firpo just got in. This was probably like 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I think about even some modern times, some modern guys. I feel like Kessler is on par with some modern guys who've gotten in. So I think he'll eventually get in. May not be here immediately, but I think, yeah, here in a few years or so, maybe he'll
Was odds are
ultimately.
better than if he was old school because they limit the amount of old school that gets in
Yeah, they only do a certain
severely,
amount
and
this
they do
time.
3 a year for the others. So I think it's 3 a year. But like
Yeah,
so
the
amongst the old
are
school.
they the old time category? That they call it. I think
Oh, Dan wants to talk Joe Louis. We can do this.
exactly. Lewis wasn't playing. He was still very. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what didn't relate to. Yeah, I had fallen behind on some of them. Appreciate your Watt Talk said he was listening there. Yeah, Lewis versus Ali, hard to call. I favor Lewis too. Great power. It will be up. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
worth watching full Joe Louis fights
Oh
because
yeah.
then
Oh
you get
yeah.
to see the jab because he has his highlights where he's throwing combinations and all this wonderful footwork and timing and this spatial awareness and the different ways, like just the overall brilliance of the style that he crafted. But watching his whole fights is where you see the jab and you see how hard he is to catch without him stuffing that punch and then hitting you back. And he knew how to do it. Like, who's another guy? Ezra Charles.
Oh yeah.
Okay, here's another one to watch. Ezra Charles and Joe Louis, because Louis had about 30 pounds on him in that fight. But that's a great fight. Louis was past his best, but he had a size advantage. That turned into a great fight. But Ezra Charles was the angles. There are moments when James Toney would remind me of some of the footage I've seen of Ez, how quickly he could sometimes cover distance at certain angles that would shock you because of the pace of everything else. Like, I guess that broken rhythm type thing. You know, there's sometimes in the more modern, the greats, you see the echoes of the past, even if they're not fighting as often or there aren't as many
Yeah.
beastly matchups on their resume. It's still impressive. And we were talking about guys to watch. I mean, there's always Roy Jones Jr. His highlights are fun, but his full fights are pretty fun too.
Yeah.
Just to see how he walk around, strut around, and all that confidence, but then being so quick, it was hard to exploit that. Like Prince Nassim was kind of like that, all that cockiness and confidence, but he was hard to turn the tables on, so he got away with it for a long time. He had one
Yeah.
tough fight I remember, but like most of those fights, he'd be clowning people the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. It came down to yeah. Yeah, certainly situational, but he couldn't do it with Marco Antonio Barrera. Different type of beast to deal with right
That's a
there.
fun fight. Yeah, and the style, Barrera's the style the approach he took was very effective. That was a fun fight.
And he
But the fight
roughing
afterwards,
him up.
Nassim's comeback fight, he was getting kind of booed. He was boxing more conventionally, and they were kind of booing, I guess. I think that was
Yeah.
the fight that broke him, not the Barrera fight. It was the one where the crowd wasn't on his side. They
Yeah.
weren't going
And I
for
know
it.
he was
So
rumored to. Yeah, there was always rumors of him potentially coming back or whatever, but yeah, never
he was
panned
very
out.
entertaining. Lots of great walkouts and stuff. You know, real entertaining fighter and a good fighter.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some
but
guys
he had those
stylistically, they're just
breakthroughs.
exciting like that. Like I loved Ricky Hatton, man. I like those body shots.
Oh yeah.
And
And
he's
then
140. You could plug him in there with a lot of pretty great early era welterweights because a lot of them were cutting to 142.
so yeah, he
Isn't
had
Junior
pins
Welter
there.
140? What's Junior Welter?
Yeah, 140. Yeah.
Yeah, so I put him right in there, and he would cut. I mean, I call him Ricky Fatton for nothing. They would be cutting more
Yeah.
weight than they would, but Hatton Walcott, that'd be an interesting fight.
Oh yeah, Ricky Hatton Walcott.
Joe and Barbados Walcott, yeah, that'd be
Oh
an
yeah,
interesting
no.
matchup.
Very rough one there on the inside for sure. They're
Yeah, I don't know
definitely.
how the hell that would go. Walcott could wrestle though, so some of it would depend on the rules.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good at manhandling people, manipulating the body weight, but it would be less allowed in Hatton's era.
Stocky 5'1" cat. So he was strong for sure. Dan mentions Desert Charles is so awesome. Middleweight, light heavyweight, 8 successful title defenses as heavyweight champion. Light heavyweight for Archie 3 times, won all 3, KO Archie in the last one. Yeah, Desert Charles, damn good fighter. One of the more underrated fighters there for sure. And to think about the fact that he could have been middleweight champion of the world, could have been light heavyweight champion of the world. We know him from heavyweight vein, but that being said, he was really man, just a great fighter at the lower weights as well. And he was essentially a part of the Black Murderer's role for a period there. We know he ultimately ended up getting a heavyweight title, but he was in there with straight dogs and all that stuff. You think about Charlie Burley, think about the likes of Charlie Burley, how he's highly regarded from a Black Murderer's role perspective. Ezzard Charles, I believe, I know he has a win, maybe 2 over him or something like that. I can't remember exactly how many, but I have a video of Charlie Burley on the channel. But man, Ezzard Charles, damn good fighter, underrated fighter still to this day. And you sometimes you hear him get mentioned in the way that he probably should, because you hear some of these lists and all this stuff and his name doesn't come up on them. And it's like a shame, because he was one hell of a fighter.
Yeah, and he was one of the very best in the world across multiple weights. Just he finally got his opportunity above his natural sort of weight class.
Oh yeah.
So he was smallish on that thing, but man, the guy could fight. I love watching his fights. The intelligence and the precision and power and the setups. He's like a Joe Gans style. Those traps could be building traps from the beginning of the fight. You just don't know what's going to be unleashed, but he was a clever fighter, and just very underrated. And if I'm not mistaken, if you're talking about wins over fellow Hall of Famers, he's 4th. You got Harry Greb, then you got Sam Langford, then you got Ray Robinson, and with just one less win over Hall of Famer, you got Ez. So
yeah.
So even though he didn't have as many fights as some of the other massive resume guys, he still had an awful lot of fights compared to anyone high level today.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And he had a lot of wins in there, a lot of powerful wins, man. His box rec is an interesting one to go look at. Very much. Just scroll down through his box rec.
Yeah,
see the runs, see a couple of those runs, like, whoa, okay.
And there's footage out there of them, folks. Be sure to check them out. There's footage out there of Ezzard Charles, a decent amount relative to, considering the time frame and such. But you'll get to see just how good he is for your own eyes, for those that want to see footage, because there are some who they want to see the footage for themselves or whatever. But
yeah, he's a guy. He's one of those guys where you may not have everything, but you got something. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas like with Langford, there's only 3 that seem to have survived for the public, but that's still 3 more than none.
Yeah.
Just take what you can get. What can you do? You don't have. There are a lot of Jack Johnson performances I would love to have video for.
Oh yeah. All right. It's crazy. Yeah, so many we don't. We think about those that we don't have footage of, and certainly it makes you appreciate those that you do have footage of. And certainly Ezzard Charles is one of those. Got some outstanding work out there on film, of course. So that's how you can see and tap in for your own self. Then shout out to Rock Chalk. Yeah, appreciate you there, Rock Chalk, sharing that. So it was Massachusetts where that incident went down at. So thanks for sharing there, Rock Chalk. Dan mentions all the greatest heavyweights are small, are on the small side, except for Foreman, Jeffries, and the Max Beards of the world. Oh yeah. Those are some interesting ones there for sure. So yeah, you have some who are considered behemoths or whatever, but yeah, relatively speaking, yeah, you think about even the guys that are considered small. Some considered small, they aren't as small as what meets the eye, like Ali being 6'3", So he's not necessarily small, but he's not like one of those big heavy weights in terms of just overall weight and such, So it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's also when you get up past a certain size, they're all hit hard because the sheer size compared to the size of a human chin or your internal organs compared to how big these fists are and stuff. So, yeah, so when you get to heavyweight, you don't have to be a huge heavyweight to have knockout power. And anyone who sparred in the gym, you get up sparring in the gym, someone who's like 195 or more, you got to be careful about jabs and everything. Like, you can't be fucking around because there's an inherent power that suddenly everything's a little more critical, and it's hard for them to even pull enough to not hurt you on accident coming into it. So it's
Yep.
tough. Not everyone has that control. So it's like, yeah, it's tough. So like someone like Marciano, where yeah, he was small compared to some of these big lumbering guys, but I don't think that gives them necessarily a better chance to beat him. They'd have to do more than just be really big, or they're just going to get their body just ripped apart. And they're going to be punching further down than they've ever had to try and punch because he already leans down. He's already in a crouch.
Oh
So
yeah.
the odds, what are they going to do? Just punch him in the back of the head till they get DQ'd? Like they're going to have real trouble landing at all, or they'll have to lean on him and get fouling on that way. They're going to lose a lot of points. And Rocky doesn't get tired, man. He's going to be
No, he keeps
just
coming.
figuring out how to solve that puzzle is no easy thing. Certain guys make it hard. Relating back to that Calzaghe fight with Jeff Lacey, you could see Lacey had the artillery. He was obviously in great condition. He went the whole distance, took hell on earth. He just couldn't get it off. He couldn't set it up. And Calzaghe, his broken rhythm was making it possible for him to just set his weight and do what he does. Calzaghe didn't leave those opportunities for him. He was very on point. And so, they're guys who are like massively talented, but certain matchups are going to be tough stylistically. And I think Rocky is a pretty ugly matchup for quite a few guys, in spite of his size. Not necessarily because of it, because of his power relative to how low down he could get. Makes it tough. Oh, I like that logo there, Josh. You got half you, half the 8. I need something like that with my goofy face. I'm not saying your face is goofy, but mine is.
No, I get. Yeah, I just. I guess you could say
update it though, man.
Logo.
You busting natural. You got to update it so you got the
different style that I'm rocking with.
Cornrows, yeah.
So I might have to do a little something. So yeah, definitely see what's up. Hey, might have to whip you up something there. 8 random acoustic thoughts.
Oh, let's talk about that. Would be great. This one I have here. I mean, I usually try to throw something up, but yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Dan mentioned
Ali versus Norton on the Carson show.
Ali Norton, the dude Norton, huge, only 203 pounds. Oh yeah, Norton, yeah. Hey, Hercules right there, right? They called him Hercules because he was cut like a piece of marble, right? So yeah, big dude right there. So yeah, you're right. Only 203 pounds, but hey, that was 203 pounds of muscle right there, rock solid.
Yeah, and it's the frame and the style of fighting. Like, if a good coach fighter team is gonna they're gonna optimize their style to what they can do, their attributes. So some of the great fighters, especially you look at the 4 Kings, all of them optimize their style to their build and their specifics, right?
Yeah.
Haggard could take a lot because he had those plates of fucking muscle on the side of his head and stuff. So, but like the switch hitting and stuff, he had his own particular, the stamina and that sort of that bobbing, like hard to pin down to land hard on because he was always bobbing and moving. He had the stamina, he could switch stance. You got Duran's fireness and his footwork, like one of our listeners mentioned earlier. Highly underrated footwork. Then you have Ray Leonard, the speed, the conditioning, the flash, also the attitude and the psychological. Because you got to admit, when he does the windmill thing and then jabs you with the other hand, that's funny as shit. Like he was. But then Hearns, with that, like his particular style, he definitely fighting the way that's best for a man with a giant cobra body. So even when he was at 147, man, that's a scary physique. You'd be like, no way you're that light.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like the Bruce Lee effect. He got wings of muscle on his back, makes him look bigger than he is, heavier than he is.
But yeah, light. That stuff factored in. Dan mentioned Foreman at his best, only 212, and he's a monster. Yeah, no doubt. Just bludgeoning type punches. Just the gold medalist too. In the Olympics, folks. Just think about that. So yeah, Foreman, man, just you see him the way he was basically ragdolling Norton. Just in their fight, you just see him.
He knew how to push off the guys. He knew how to frame off and stuff. So he knew how to use his size. So he's like, say you put him in with Rocky, it's gonna be hard for Rocky because he knows how to push down on that shoulder and keep you where you're at. And in that particular matchup, Rocky can't hit him if he's doing the stay away with the forehead. Like if he's just holding him on a shoulder, he's still out of range. That's a tough one. Foreman knew how to use that. So it wasn't just that he was big. He was big, but he was also he had
Yeah,
a way to use that size to his advantage, and he hit so hard. And he
yeah,
trained to hit so hard. It was part of the attributes. So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
say if
You think
Tommy
about that.
Hearns didn't have that wicked cross, his overall style wouldn't have been as effective. But he had that chopping knockout punch. And so it was Foreman had those thudding punches. A dangerous guy to fight.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy just seeing him. His stuff. It just clears. Just looking at Foreman on film and just see what he's doing. You think about what he's doing, like Frazier and all that stuff. Frazier's 200+ pounds, and he's just in there, just catching them, just sending them down. It's like it's nothing. And that goes to show you he had something in those fists. I just heard something. I saw this little shorts clip where Shannon Briggs was talking about being hit by George Foreman, and of course, this is the older version of George Foreman that he was in there against, and he was talking about that being the hardest he was ever hit. He said he got hit by a car before, and it felt like that because he just said he could just feel his punches, like almost like it was like there were no gloves or they were thin or something like that. So that goes to show you right there. You think about Briggs; he's a big dude, so.
Yeah, some of the people who fought a prime, like a heavyweight Sam Langford, Harry Wills said, he hit so hard, you'd be looking behind you to see the fist coming out the back of your body. Like he was something to that effect. Like some people, it almost doesn't hurt. They hit you so hard. Rocky people, like it hurts, but it's like shakes your soul to the core. It's not like just a superficial pain.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There's a good list of punchers right there.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Marciano, Lewis, Dempsey, Fitz, Patterson, Langford.
Yeah, my guy Dempsey in there, the Dempsey role.
Yeah, and with Patterson, people don't necessarily think of him as a big puncher, but like if
Maybe.
you go back, if someone wanted to go back on YouTube where it's all lovingly archived and just watch his fights with the original commentary, they're talking about his power.
Yeah.
Patterson, he commanded a great deal of respect. So like now he maybe not remembered as some big hitter, but he was a heavy hitter.
Yeah. Shout out to my man Alexander Kimball. He was pointing out what you're talking about there, random in terms of Marciano tailor-made for Foreman. He says Foreman in one or no more the middle of the second. Hey, Styles make fights for sure. For sure. That'll be a tough one.
I don't know how long I'd see it going because Marciano had good stamina, but yeah, I just think it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Certain guys, especially like Foreman against smaller guys, because Ali is not a small guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, contrary to the thought of it, yeah, he's 6'3".
Historically speaking, Ali's a big guy. He has a big head.
Right.
The fully adult version of Ali was a big fella.
Let's think about that 6'3", the way he was moving in there. Still no heavyweight moving like him in there.
And that rhythm. Yeah, and that's where people say everything always gets better. That's not true of boxing. Because you show me even one heavyweight who's been able to move like Ali since Ali.
Yeah.
And at a high level and make it work. Nobody, because you only get one of those.
Right.
It's a one-off fighter. In boxing, unfortunately, it's not like sprinting or heavy powerlifting or whatever, the long jump, long distance. It doesn't just get better and better because it's very individualized sport. And when coaches pass away, something leaves with them. Like when Manny Stewart passed away, rest in peace.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what replaced that gap in the knowledge? Nothing replaced that. You just lose it. That's been happening since boxing existed. The great coaches pass, and then you just don't have that anymore.
You have his nephew out there, Sugar Hill, but he's got what he's learned. But that certainly you can't replace Manny Stewart.
Right. So like it's hard to get another Joe Louis because you kind of need another Jack Blackburn. Oh, yeah. You're not getting another Jack Blackburn because no fighter who fought Jack Blackburn's level of competition would be broke enough to need to be a coach.
Yeah, it's tough right there. Yeah,
world. You're just not going to end up with someone of that level of greatness and technique that's going to.
Yeah, you just don't find the Jack Blackburn out there like there. They just don't grow on trees. Hey, thank you, Rock Chalk. Thank you, appreciate you, Rock Chalk. Be sure to go check out Rock Chalk, folks, at Rock Chalk True Crimes. Says thanks, fella, for the great conversation. Always great to have you in the mix, Rock Chalk. So check her out, folks. Go hit that subscribe button right now. If you haven't, hit that like button too. But yeah, you don't those guys. You think about some of the other trainers out there. who have done their things. Yeah, they just don't grow on trees, especially when you get that level of experience and all that stuff. Think about a Ray Arcel, who I mentioned earlier, the amount of time that he spent in the game, and man, it's just like you can't replace that.
Yeah. Let's see. Frazier, Schmeling, Tyson, they're all very good punchers.
Oh
Hey,
yeah,
there's a
oh
good
yeah,
matchup. Frazier, Tyson.
Max Milling.
Frazier, Tyson. Frazier, Tyson's a good fight.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a
You know,
very
I'm not. I'm not sure. I think some people say, well, Tyson's like an upgraded heavier, but Frazier had a special kind of rhythm and aggression, and that
kind of
hook.
different styles, you know.
He could land with that hook, that gazelle punches and stuff. Like he could cover some ground with that thing. He wasn't like anyone Tyson fought that I can think of.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's tough. Yeah, that's
Although
tough.
I'd say, as far as the great heavyweights, like there are some big guys who could really punch. Like Lennox Lewis had some sting in his, and he was a huge guy.
Yeah,
But it
he
wasn't
was.
necessarily like his main attribute, but he sure had it.
No,
And
you're
he
right
makes my
there.
top 10. Did he make your top 10 this time, Josh?
Who?
Lennox Lewis?
Oh yeah, he's gonna be in there. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be in there. Yeah.
Yeah, he made my 10. As far as like modern era
Yep.
heavyweights, like he's on that short list to me.
I've never really done a list, so this will be a first for me. So
It's tough, isn't it?
yeah, it
Going
is. It
all the
is.
way back, all these great resumes. It's
You
pretty
don't
tough.
want to count anyone out, and ultimately someone's gonna be counted out because you can only have so many. It's on the top
Well,
10.
force you to think about how you define greatness for the purposes of that list. There's a lot of different ways to think of greatness. It's
Oh
like say
yeah,
with Marciano, people would just say, "Look, he didn't lose as a pro, and he went out on top," and that adds to his greatness. Even if
yeah,
there are the guys with a bigger resume, they're like, "Yeah, but he didn't lose. He went out on top, and he didn't draw the color line,
yeah,
and he fought some greats." And that will be enough to, and they're not going to leave him off because that qualifies enough different realms of greatness.
yeah,
And other people might say, well, I'm looking at other factors here, and these guys did more at heavyweight, or they fought more big guys, or they fought more internationally. So many different ways to rank, but it'll make you think about how you even rank things to try and do a heavyweights list. It's tough. I
and
remember with
some
BL
might.
and Scrapbook. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say, and some might not have certain guys if they don't see them or have footage or whatever, which is another dynamic right there, which is always an interesting thing as well. Sometimes that's though maybe even not purposefully held against a fighter, for instance, the lack of footage, but you don't need it to understand what they did. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And again, it depends on what someone's looking for what triggers their criteria of greatness. So I think when
Yeah,
we do the show, it's entirely fair if we like say, okay, so there's different versions of greatness. So this list could change depending on how you start narrowing it.
yep.
It is hard to do. You don't want to diss anyone by leaving them off, but it's like there are
Mm-hmm.
just different ways. I go a lot by resume,
Everybody can't make it.
but certainly some guys. I think coming back to the Eddie Hearn list, that's not having Lewis anywhere in the top 10 or 11. That's a tough one. That's not it.
Yeah,
Like
right.
if I saw that list and I didn't know who wrote it, I'd be like,
Like
oh,
what?
bless their heart. They
Yeah,
just discovered boxing. Because it's just hard, man. Joe
yeah.
Lewis is a unit. There's a reason. Like he was like the hottest thing since sliced bread. Like he wasn't fighting in an era when there were no great fighters. Like he was. There were a lot of people who could draw the attention. And there's a reason he was celebrated to the degree he was,
Yeah.
and still is.
No, you're
He
right.
still
You're
holds
right.
some records.
He was legit for sure.
It's hard
Hey,
to do that.
Dan mentioned you got Oliver Carl, Rothman KO, Prime Lewis. Yeah, that is true. Hey, he got those back. So he did avenge those losses he took. Though that's a plus
Right.
for
That's
him there.
another precisely. That's another thing. Some people add those avenging losses. Like, yeah, he lost, but he got that one back. He got an opportunity to and got that one back.
Yeah.
Like Langford avenged some losses. He had some people he lost to sometimes the first time they met, but later he'd get it back.
It's kind of crazy to think that Ali was the first Patterson was the first to regain the heavyweight title, right? Ali was
That
the first to get
wonderful
it 3
hook.
times.
Yeah.
That's
Especially
crazy
at
to think it
heavyweight. It's
came that
hard,
late
man.
on, you know?
It's hard at heavy to stay on top if you're
Yeah.
fighting. Like you could be Dempsey and like slow down your career, or Johnson and trail off and stop fighting that often, or Willard or Jeffries at the end of his career. Yeah, you can hold the belt if you're not putting it up for grabs, but if you're defending it, it's hard to hang on to it. It's definitely hard to get it back.
The Manasseh Mauler. It's going to be interesting to see if he ends up on anyone's list. The Manasseh Mauler.
Great fighter. You know,
Damn good.
he didn't have a long part of his career where he was super busy, but he did have part of his career where he was super busy and lots of stoppages. And some of his best wins were over larger guys, which is also worth noting.
Yeah.
If we're talking about size counts, especially if we're then drawing it out into like mythical matchups, he was able to fight guys bigger than him. Ambrose Langford and other guys. Joe Jeanette was able to do it. Johnson too. He won the colored heavyweight championship. He was smaller than Denver Ed Martin.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, Denver Ed about 6'3". Yeah, 6'3". You could say 6'3", 6'4", somewhere there, but 6'3" essentially. 200 pounds, 200 plus, depending on the situation. So, no, that factors in. Dan mentioned McCall was all coked out and crying during the fight. Quit. Not fair compared. True. That was true. We interviewed him on the channel once. I did it as a part of a thing with Skywalker and Papi Chun Yayo. And we asked him about that. He was going through some stuff there for sure. Oliver McCall, that is. And yeah, that was a pretty crazy fight. One that stands out there for sure. Yeah. Dan mentions not many, if any, could ever beat a prime Dempsey. Hey, he was a beast, no doubt about it. He was definitely a beast there. He's got a good variety of styles on his resume, realistically speaking, as well. Good variety of styles in terms of different types of opponents that he fought from a stylistic perspective. Some were boxers, movers, and all of that stuff. I do feel that he was. I wish we would have gotten a more active version of him there towards the back end. So realistically, yeah, he had so much fight that was probably left in him that kind of just waned away by him. Of course, his choice, moving more into the entertainment world. And hey, if they're paying money, then hey, you don't have to get hit for it. Excuse me, so can't blame you, I guess.
Yeah, he moved into it. He got a nose job and everything.
Yeah.
Dempsey did. Yeah, I got a newspaper clipping.
Yeah, so
before and after.
If they're paying you the big dollars, and he was making those big purchases at that time anyway. So of course, if you're that makes it tough to want to just get back in the ring. You're having the time of your life. You're on top of the world. You're hanging out with the stars of the world. You are the most popular, certainly athlete in the world, maybe person, human at that particular time. I mean, yeah, it's just
and suddenly the opportunity for social life and celebration, and you finally got money. We saw happen with Ruiz after he beat Joshua.
Your wife is a movie star,
Yeah, but like after Ruiz upset Joshua,
right.
He was, he's eating all these big meals, and it's all right, and it's not the only one to happen to. But
the most attention he's ever gotten.
One. Whereas Joshua was like, he moved into a little place, and he's got no distractions, and he sticks behind his jab the whole fight and just does great. Came in focused, and the opposite. And Ruiz couldn't. Surprisingly, he didn't get any of those. He hit him good a few times, but he couldn't. Joshua wasn't overthrowing those hooks, being foolish.
And only a couple times. History. Since then, Andrew Ruiz has basically faded into oblivion. Has only fought a couple, maybe a few times since then, and just goes to show you what that fame will do sometimes.
Yeah, and he's famous for that. He'll be famous for that, but as an upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that upset, is gonna be there. So he's gonna always be remembered for that. We care. Sometimes you can't just look at the records. Didn't fight 3.5 years at all before Tunney. Yeah, It was crazy. Yeah, he had some pretty some very sort of inactive periods there. Which he would have done more there for sure.
Yeah,
And that
just him, Willard, Jeffries, Willard. Um, yeah, there were other guys who just were not.
oh yeah,
They got
yeah.
it, and they didn't do much with it.
Wheeler in 4 years only a draw and then lost to Dempsey. A draw that he probably lost to Moran and then he lost to Dempsey. That's 4 years right there. So certainly he wasn't doing much fighting and I suppose training either. But yeah, when you're getting that type of money on the outside, I guess it kind of factors in. Shipping to the Vietnam, we met Jack Dempsey at his restaurant. Oh, that's awesome there. That was 1968, and a bunch of paratroopers at that point in time were high on the liked list. Jack took the time to personally wish us well. Hey, that's awesome right there, Alex. Thanks for sharing there, buddy. Salute there to you. Shout out to Alex Campbell, folks, holding it down there. Paratrooper holding it down. That's what's up right there. But man, Alex Campbell there, Ukrainian as well there. So salute there to you, Alex, rocking with you there for sure. But that's pretty dope right there, getting to meet Jack Dempsey. You know, I was at the I had to bring it in here, but they did a silent auction at the Connecticut Boxing Hall of Fame last year, and I ended up getting this postcard that was signed by Jack Dempsey from his restaurant. Ironically, there, Alex. So it's from, I forget when it's from, but it's from some point back in the day. I'm gonna get it all graded and all of that stuff. I want to at least. I need to finish getting that set up. But yeah, that's what's up right there. But I know, yeah, great guy, and that's crazy. He was I know they mentioned that not a lot of people were at his funeral, but you know, he was at one point the most popular person. And then just think about that, how time shifts things or whatnot. But man, that's amazing. That's amazing right there, Alec. Being able to run into him, especially as you're heading off to Vietnam. So salute there to you. Thank you for your service there, Alex, for sure. Oh, great stories you're sharing there. So get those type of nuggets here on the channel, folks. That's some damn good stuff right there. Appreciate you, Alex.
Yeah, Dempsey, he was like woven into boxing history and historic like numbers and things, so he's important for multiple reasons.
Oh yeah,
And so his star didn't dim like other guys. You know, he stayed famous, and
yeah.
and then you know, even you have like Tyson when he was becoming one of the most famous athletes on the planet, referenced Dempsey, the intimidation factor and stuff. So other things that kept,
Oh
sort
yeah.
of kept that alive. Not every great boxer has that same influence that endures to the same degree, but some guys, Dempsey, Ali, even Jack Johnson, you know. And Jack Johnson, most of his career is not survived on film or was never filmed in the first place. So
yeah.
So how influential was he? But like, he was that good. He was, like I've said before, if you get real technical, he gloved era, he was the first undisputed champ.
Oh yeah,
briefly, but he was the first who could say that, who firmly held the colored title, and then he beat the white champion who'd established himself, Tommy Burns.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, damn it, you know what, that Dempsey funeral, and he always went to every funeral, sometimes paid for it. Yeah, no doubt about it there. That's crazy. So yeah, he outlived a lot of his peers, pretty much the majority of them, all of them. And yeah, that was the case there. But man, Dempsey, hell of a fighter, human there. He that'd be crazy. Man, it's crazy. Some of the old timers who had restaurants and then they didn't stick, you know, or they're still not around. Would have been pretty awesome if some of them were still around, you know. If you think about it, I know time tends to change things and all that stuff. Then you see some shifting of certain brands and such, but that would have been crazy if Dempsey still had a restaurant. You think about some others who had Sugar Ray Robinson, John L. Sullivan, he had a bar. Just think about that. If that were around, that'd be crazy right there. But stuff from those days, certainly a lot of it, yeah, it's not the same, or certainly not as it is. But I remember seeing something about a place somewhere want to say in the UK. I don't know if it's England or I don't recall where it is, but where it's this really old place from that's still reflected in sort of like it was back. I want to say it had opened in the late 1800s or maybe the early 1900s, something like that. It was some type of bar or pub or something like that. Though you, of course, don't see that as much these days, but that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, Dempsey's. Well, actually, that prompts the question: should we be allowing ties in our lists for the heavyweight countdown?
Oh,
I changed the list. It makes it easier.
ties, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a cop out, but if you want to, we can do it.
We did that before with some stuff right there.
It makes it a little easier because sometimes it's too
I guess
close.
we do. Why not? Let's do it.
Cool, man.
Since we're agreeing to it, hey, we could do it.
We talked
get
about
to
doing
do what we
a
want to do.
top. Yeah, we talked about like a top 10 and have 5 honorable mentions.
Yep.
Maybe we just do our top 15, but we allow tie places. So we
Okay.
have a top 10 list, but we can jam some extra guys in there, up to 5 guys in there as ties.
Okay. Okay. All
But
right.
I do have some famous heavyweights where I put them about the same place, and it's tough to pick between them.
All right. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm with that. Yeah. Yeah. That certainly changes the dynamic in a good way. So I'm
Yeah,
for it.
there's only one rule. Normally, there's no rules. Only one rule. You're not allowed to make a list that doesn't have Joe Louis on it.
Right. Right.
What the
I think
fuck?
he's gonna be on there for sure for us.
I'm weirded out by that. I'm weirded out by that.
Yeah.
get
You
it.
know, I really yeah, I guess I didn't yeah, especially on second look at that list right there. Yeah, when you just look at how it ended up shaping out. I guess until you mentioned it, yeah, I didn't realize that he didn't have Lewis on there. That's funny.
Did you see a poster from him though? Is that his post or is that a joke someone made?
I think that's I don't know if he posted it. Maybe they got him. Maybe they heard him saying it somewhere or something
Yeah.
like that. Maybe he did an interview or something. I don't know
Wow.
what it is. But the way it's presented is like his thing. I don't think it was a joke. I think that was well.
Damn.
I don't think it's a joke technically, though we could argue it's a joke. But you know, but
Damn.
no, it's his list. But that being said, I think it was legit from all indication now. But I saw something pop up. He may have done something in 2022 and did something in 2025. I don't know, but it is very much interesting there for sure. It's really interesting. Definitely.
Yeah, because if you were like, anyway, I won't keep going on. Well, I will, but I'm going to wait a little bit longer, and then I'll keep going on. That's
Shout out to my guy Ernest dropping the building there. Appreciate you dropping by. Be sure to go check him out, folks. There. Be sure to go follow the channel. All that good stuff right there. You see it at Poppy Troon Yayo. Salute there to you. Hey, we were here just talking a little boxing, all that good stuff, a little boxing history. We're actually at the tail end there. We're just talking about what we're gonna do for our little top 10 thing. But yeah, man, random. Yeah, we've been doing the thing again. 2 hours, 42 minutes. So we'll give you nearly 3 hours of just history discussion there, random. So no, this has been a good thing there for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like these. I like some of these fantasy matchups. Like I don't
Right.
use it to rank all time greatness because it's a sport. You got to actually do it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
No.
everyone looks good until they look bad. You know.
Yeah, true.
Like Lomachenko was with the Matrix until he couldn't figure out a stiff jab and hold in the center of the ring against Teofimo. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
That is not what people would have predicted, but that's what happened in the first fight. He gave away over half the fight because he just was like, I can't get through this. Just that approach threw him all the way off. So, like, you got to see the fights, but
you do.
I do enjoy speculating. It's fun to think about what would happen, especially with guys like Dempsey or Tyson, Rocky, the real dynamic finisher type boxers. Because you'd be like, well, who could they finish? Could they finish him?
Yeah, right. Hey, you never know. You know what I'm saying? And it's and hey, some people be surprised, but yeah, and some will realize, hey, as John L. Sullivan said, and was supposedly coined, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So just because you see these big dudes running around here today doesn't mean that they're just gonna walk through competition from back in the day. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, as old John L. Sullivan himself said there, according to Professor Mike Donovan. So maybe there's some truth to that.
Yeah, you definitely can't count on, I'm really big. I mean, because then betting would be real easy.
Appreciate you
Oh,
there,
thanks,
Dana.
Dan. That's nice to say. I don't want to diss
Yes,
anyone.
indeed.
I don't want. I can't fight. I like to train, or I used to, but I I don't want to diss anybody. Talking about people's heroes here, it's complicated. I like hearing your stance here, Josh. It's on you.
I'm just messing around there.
That's
No,
what's
hey,
up.
let's do
So
it.
let's see. We went through a lot of fantasy matchups.
Yeah, a ton of them. We talked about kind of some of the things we're gonna iron out there when we have our discussion and so forth.
That'll be fun. The heavyweights.
It's going
Tough
down
one.
March 4th, folks. March 4th. We're going to do that top 10 finally. We had to push it back a few times, but we want to give it to you in our truest and realest format. So we had to do so because we can give the proper attention to it. Otherwise, we just be throwing some nonsense out there. So March 4th, I think we're going to stick with this one right here for sure. Because as mentioned, we have some thoughts already there on paper, all that stuff. I have some thoughts. I already have my assortment there. And we're going to include ties as well. So you're going to see some of that. You might see some ties in there for good reason and such. So I look forward to it. I think it's going to be
that'll
good.
make it a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be a good one there. Appreciate it. Dan says he's looking forward to that. Big time. Yes, indeed. And next week, so random, I do have on tap the greatest British fight, or I think it might be the greatest. I don't know if maybe it's English fighters as opposed to British fighters. I think the greatest English fighter, so not just British in general. Greatest English fighters, this being England. I believe that's the listing there. Now, this isn't like a ranking or anything of that nature, but I plan on, I guess, talking about just some different English fighters who've done their thing. The Frank Morans of the world. Who else is English?
Well,
I think it's
Fitz, if you're
English,
talking
right?
about birth, Fitz.
Let me see.
I mean, if you're talking about the British Isles, like that whole group of islands, you got George Gardner, born over there.
Well, no, not the whole thing. I think because someone the final boss asked me to do it, so not British as a whole, just like factoring in everything. I think it's just gonna be how do I have it listed here? Let me see.
Al-Baghdadi was born in London. Slapping
Yeah,
me,
English. So
sneaking
I
in
guess
there.
I'm
He was
only
born in London, technically.
yeah. So only those that are, I guess, from England, somewhere in England.
Nice. Get a chance to talk about Ted
London or
Lewis.
otherwise. So on the thumbnail, I have Frank Moran, Charlie Mitchell, Freddie Mills. I have Ted Kid Lewis, of course, Ted, and I have the guy that had beat Sugar, Randy Turpin. Have him.
Oh, Turpin, yeah.
And then I have Mendoza, who we talked about earlier, but he's bare knuckle. Mendoza. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mendoza. Oh, Henry Cooper. Yeah, we gotta include. We gotta discuss. Oh, Henry, the great Henry. He did some of the intros for some of the old boxing documentaries. They did. I think probably it was like the 90s, early and mid 90s. I know there's one in particular I'm thinking about. I don't know if it was legendary heavyweights or what, but they had Henry Cooper in there, older Henry Cooper. He starts it out and everything. I got to see which one it is. So yeah. Dan's on.
I might try and jump in on that, Josh, but I need to research because I don't remember enough of the guys I should be talking.
Yeah, I'll still need to research some because I had to look because when you just narrow it down, if we're narrowing it down to England, so there's some guys that I just think about from an overall standpoint that I can't include because I'm thinking about them from an overall or thinking about British, but I have to narrow it down so I can't include the Welsh fighters and stuff like that because I have some Welsh fighters that I really like. And so this is just the English fighters, folks. England. You think about that. But they've had some great fighters over there.
So Lewis is English born, right, Lennox?
Was he English or Jamaican?
I think he's born in England and then he moved to Canada, I thought, when he was little.
Let me see. Yeah, it could be. You might be right. Lennox Lewis. Let me see. I have to double check myself because when you factor that type of stuff in, it does bring to question. But West Ham, London. Yep. Yep. So yeah,
Yep.
you're right. Well,
Kawasaki
West Ham
was
actually.
born in England. You can't say
Yep.
much more than that, but he was born there.
Yep.
Maybe throw him in on a technicality.
Mm-hmm.
But that sounds like a good talk.
No, he
I'd love
no he
to be
fits
involved.
because it said born in London, England. I guess West Ham.
I'm trying to think
So
of who
yeah,
else is going over there.
so
I can't
Linux
quite
got to be in
remember.
there. So that's good. Hey, that makes it easier right there. If somebody can talk about right there. Talk about Linux. I had to look up some others who were English. So no, I'm with you. I had to look up some too because I can't remember all that are English specifically. So that factors in. When thinking about it. Um, uh, Walsh Kidberg, who's the great old time John something. He really wrote the Marcus Queensberry first gloves undefeated. Jack Stack, Calzaghe, Wells. I think you're talking about. Are you talking about freaking? Is it Broughton? Not Broughton. If not Broughton,
Oh, Broken's rules. Yeah.
was he? Was he? Is that who you're talking about there? Dan Broughton, Jack Broughton. But
Jack.
there's
Yeah, Jack. I think that he's right. You
another guy
mentioned
too.
Jack Slack there. Yeah, and Dan. So Kawasaki grew up in Wales, but he was actually born in London.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't even know if he ever lived there, but he was born there. Yeah, so that's why I was saying it's kind of a technicality.
Oh okay.
But I think his dad, I think Enzo's
Yeah, I didn't even know
Corsican
that. I
or one
thought
of the islands over there. He's Mediterranean. I don't know about his mom. Maybe she's English. Not
we
sure.
always associated him with Wells. I didn't know he was born in England.
Yeah, so he's
Crazy.
born there. You could probably look it up. I'm pretty sure I got that right.
Let me see. Yeah, I didn't know.
I just don't know where in England. I think it was in London though.
Oh yeah, Hammersmith, London. Oh yeah, right. You're right. Dang, I didn't know that. Yeah, I guess maybe I had seen it in passing and never didn't remember anything.
And then one of the great rivalries, like Ben Eubank, those guys, the seniors, they're worth mentioning.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 So those are some good ones.
Very
So yeah, let's
entertaining
do it.
rivalry.
Just like then, yeah. Oh, Enzo.
Yeah, Enzo was really good working with his son.
Oh yeah,
Joe
yeah.
would listen to him. Joe was real fiery, but Enzo could get his attention. He always reminded him to get back to the jab. Perfect thing for his attributes. So like Enzo was very important to his success.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
And Joe
Enzo.
had the skills, but he had that extra edge.
Yeah, Enzo Calzaghe. Jack Broad rode up there, became the London Prize Ring. Okay, yeah. So Jack Broad, yeah. So good stuff there, Alex. Yeah, I know of him. I think I did a little photo animation video, but he looks like. But I think I may have gotten. There's some pictures out there because there's another early time dude. It was not Jack Broughton, but it's another one who was doing. I think it might have been. I don't know if it was London Prize Ring rules or something. What is his name? With the picture, Joe Goss. I think it. Joe Goss.
I don't know that era at all. That's why I usually try to remember to say gloved era because I don't claim any knowledge of before.
Yeah, he was an English bare knuckler. It says he immigrated to the United States of America in 1867.
Oh yeah,
Joe Goss.
hey,
But maybe I'm thinking about somebody else still there. Actually,
yeah.
I'm seeing Goss here, but I'm thinking about somebody else outside of Broughton. But I figured out. But yeah, there's some guys you can get mixed up. Like I've mixed up some photos as I mentioned there early on.
Oh, dude, I've said so many wrong things on our shows.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I think
Like even shit that I know. Like I was talking about Langford's third fight with Jim Flynn. I was like, I think it was in February 1910.
Yeah.
It was fucking March 17th. It was St. Patty's Day.
Which was
For
Cornish.
fuck's sake. And it's like, and I just got it wrong in the moment. I just like brain cut out.
Hey, oh yeah, I got the Dan. You're talking about Jack Slack. I think Slack.
Yeah.
Slack or Slack. I think what's his name? That was the
There's
grandfather.
an MMA pundit who's goes by that name, but yeah, that was the name of the boxer.
He's the grandfather of Jim Belcher or something like that. I think is what it is. I saw some movie that came out here within the last maybe the last decade or so, but I saw some movie about Jim Belcher, and I found out about him being Jim Belcher's. I feel like his grandfather, Jack Slack, or something like that.
Yeah, there's a whole
Oh,
rich.
James Fig. Okay, Fig. That's what I was trying to think of. James Fig. Okay.
Oh, right on, right on.
Well, I mix it. Sometimes I mix James Fig and Jack Broughton. Those two guys. So you got it. But yeah, this is getting into like some older eras. I don't know a ton about them myself, about either of those individuals myself. I just know I've seen some of the pictures or depictions. They're not necessarily pictures, more so drawings or paintings.
Right.
You know, because that's what they did back then.
Yeah, and the
But
era I've researched, like 1890s, is as far back as I've gone, and I only done that to research early career for Langford opponents. So like, there's a whole rich
yeah,
history already by that point that's transitioning or transitioned into the gloved era. But like, there's so much because as I'm reading the articles in like the early 1900s, they're already referencing all these great rivalries and fights and lineages. You know, coaches who used to be fighters, and there was already so much of a history by that point. And even though it's so far in the past now, we think of it as like everything was rudimentary, but it's not really the case, you know. But when they reset to gloves, there was a breaking in point where people had to figure that out, the best ways to fight. But it doesn't take that long.
yeah.
There's money at stake, and you got physically intelligent professional fighters working to optimize the ways to win to get that money. So it's not like they spent decades and decades just flailing their arms. The people had technique. You can go back to Nonpareil Dempsey and find pictures in the paper, him slipping punches and stuff like that, like purposefully, like as part of his style, hit, not get hit.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of
Oh yeah.
greats who just faded, but they were in their day. They were very famous and respected. It's just time distills this down.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's yeah, I think that's yeah, some crazy stuff. Hey, that adds to it. I mean, I think there's so much hey, it keeps us coming back and thinking about it. So many things that we could talk about as it relates to this great sport there in general. But
Yeah,
man,
such a rich history, and there's so much.
yeah,
But I like doing these multi-purpose chats because I learn a lot. People bring up stuff I may not even know about, and I just get a chance to. So I listen to a lot of fights, and I watch quite a few
oh yeah,
fights. So it helps me figure out what to go back and watch or rewatch or pay attention to, you know, because I have my favorites. So you don't have to tell me to go back and watch like James Toney's career and some of these other certain guys, Calzaghe, certain guys I really enjoy watching. But there are other guys I may not know about, and I know people clued me in. I'm very grateful. You know, that
yeah.
includes stuff you've done on your channel where
Oh yeah.
I'm not savvy, especially the newer guys where you and Boz doing like recaps and previewing. I guess you do some previewing, but you especially recap the fights and things. So I don't know who anyone is. I'm
Oh yeah.
sorry.
No,
But
yeah.
that's not
There's
just
so many.
boxing. I don't. So the Pats were just in the Super Bowl. I couldn't tell you a single player on that team.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
here,
No,
man. I'm here, but I couldn't tell you a single. I'm
yeah, it's
just
a
not.
different squad. Yeah, it's a different squad compared to that.
I'm
With
unplugged.
your,
I don't know a single name. I don't even know what the quarterback's called.
yeah,
Someone told
Drake
me, but I
May,
forgot. It's just some name.
young
It's
cat
what?
Drake May. He's pretty good so far. One of those little things, but yeah, that tends to be the case. But yeah, man. So yeah, unfortunately, folks, we're 3 hours in here. Gonna have to dip up out this thing here.
That's what's up.
See, real quick, Jim Mace. Oh yeah, Mace. We'll have to do some talk about him there, Dan, at some point. Hey, Anthony, man, we're just about to hop off there, Dan. Or Anthony, man. Unfortunately, hey, let's set up something. Let's try to make something happen here. We can talk history. Tommy West, damn good boxer there. So he's one I'm gonna have to talk about. I'll have to look up some additional stuff on him, but damn good fighter there, Tommy West is, and he's in some videos that I've done here on the channel. There, unfortunately, but yeah, we got you there, Anthony. Next time around, we got to make something happen there. Appreciate you dropping by there, buddy. But yeah, we're getting ready to actually roll up out this thing. So man, I appreciate you dropping by here, random. And of course, we're gonna do this again. But check us out next week. I'm gonna be talking about English fighters there. The English fighters who've done their thing. We've got some good suggestions. So I think it'll be a very ripe discussion because there'll be some that you might not know of that have done their thing. We're going to talk about maybe even the Peddler Palmers of the world, you know, the Last name Wells, something Wells. I can't think of his name. Something Wells.
Bombardier.
Was that?
Bombardier. One of the guys who went by the
I don't know if
Army.
he was a bombardier, but I know about some of
Really
those
well, was it?
bombardiers.
I don't know.
I
I get
can't
them all
think of his first
confused.
name,
But
last name. I'm gonna have to look up some stuff, but we're gonna do this right. We're gonna do this some good justice there. So it is gonna happen there for sure. So yeah, hey, we'll touch base at some point then beforehand there, random Jeff. But I think it'll be a good one for sure. So man, I appreciate you dropping by, coming through, showing some love there, random per usual. 3 hours in, folks. Don't say we don't show love right here. 3 hours in, boxing history. It doesn't end there.
yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And
Oh, yeah.
congratulations, Dan. We've made it through the whole
Appreciate
slog.
y'all. Yeah. Yeah, thank you there, Dan. Thank you there, Alex. Sullivan beat Goss. Oh, interesting there. Interesting. Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that one as well. There, Alex. No, appreciate you there, buddy. So, thanks all definitely who came through. We're gonna try to do this again, there, folks. And hey, enjoy the rest of your night and the weekend because it is a Friday. Salute to you all.
Hey, take care, everybody.
Peace.